Hello everyone, and welcome back to Mr. Night Fear. I know many of you listen to these stories to help you fall asleep. So before you get settled in, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from. And if you're enjoying the episodes, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's get comfortable, relax, and begin. This happened when I was a child, probably around 8 years old. My parents had me late in life, and my two older siblings were both at least a decade older than me. That night, I woke up to a noise coming from downstairs, a commotion, like my parents were arguing or panicking over something. I cracked my bedroom door open, listening. Their voices were tense, urgent, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. Curious and a little nervous, I stepped out into the hallway and called down the stairs. "Mom? Dad?" My mom appeared at the bottom of the staircase. Her expression was tight, almost frantic. "Go back to bed," she said firmly. Something in her tone made me obey without question. I turned and crawled back into bed, though I lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling, listening. Then suddenly, I heard the front door downstairs slam shut. Silence followed. A thick, suffocating silence. I figured my parents had left the house, though I had no idea why. Either way, I did as I was told and eventually drifted back to sleep. Sometime later, I woke up again. The front door had closed, softly this time. Footsteps followed, slow and deliberate, but there was no talking. I assumed it was my parents returning, and that they were trying not to wake me. I heard faint shuffling, then the sound of cabinets opening and closing. The fridge door creaked open, then shut. The noises were oddly methodical. Drawers sliding open, utensils clinking together, the occasional dull thud against the counter. I figured it was my older brother, Chris. He was 10 years older than me and had already started driving at that time. It wouldn't have been unusual for him to come home late and rummage through the kitchen for a midnight snack. These were all logical explanations, I told myself. Reasons not to be scared. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, steady. I turned toward my bedroom door. The footsteps grew louder as they reached the top of the staircase. Then they stopped. Seconds later, my door creaked open. I didn't move, didn't sit up, just kept my eyes open, barely breathing. There was no light outside my room, only darkness. And in that darkness, a shadow stood in my doorway. A tall, unmoving silhouette. I swallowed and whispered, "Chris?" No answer. "Mom?" I tried again. "Dad?" Still silence. A thick, suffocating kind of silence. My chest tightened as I forced out a final, shaky whisper. "Who's there?" No response. Just the figure standing there, watching me. Then slowly, it pulled the door shut. My heart was pounding in my ears. I lay there frozen, every hair on my body standing on end. I listened as the footsteps retreated back down the stairs. Soft thuds on the wood. Measured. Calm. For some reason, I convinced myself it had to be my dad. Maybe he was just checking on me and didn't want to wake me up. Maybe he was just exhausted from whatever had happened earlier. Minutes passed. Silence. Then, curiosity got the better of me. I slid out of bed, my bare feet pressing against the cold floor. I tiptoed to my door and slowly turned the knob, opening it just enough to slip through. The house was pitch dark. I crept downstairs, careful to avoid the creaky steps. As I reached the kitchen doorway, I froze. A tall figure stood in the middle of the kitchen. I could barely make out the shape, just a shadowy form in the darkness, facing me. My throat tightened. I whispered, "Dad?" The figure didn't move. Then, in a deep, guttural voice that didn't belong to my father, it said, "Go back upstairs." Something about the way it spoke, low, unnatural, sent terror ripping through me. I turned and ran, bolting up the stairs as fast as my legs could carry me. I dove into my bed, yanking the covers over my head, trembling so violently I thought my bones would shake loose. I lay there, frozen, for what felt like hours. Then, I heard the front door open. My parents' voices. I shot up, my heart still hammering. I stumbled out of bed and rushed to the top of the stairs. My parents looked startled to see me awake. "What happened?" I asked. They exchanged a glance. My mom let out a breath. "Chris had a little accident, but he's going to be okay." That's all they told me at the time. I only found out months later what had really happened. Chris had gotten into a car accident. He'd been driving when he shouldn't have, under circumstances that made it unsafe. My parents got a call from the hospital in the middle of the night and rushed to see him. They had left in such a hurry. They forgot to lock the front door. That's when I asked my dad something that had been gnawing at my mind. "Did you come into my room last night?" His face paled. He and my mom had been gone for hours. My mom's expression twisted into something close to panic. She started yelling at my dad, demanding why he hadn't locked the door. I told them about the person at my doorway, the figure in the kitchen. My dad immediately grabbed his gun and searched the entire house. My mom called the police. I don't know if the intruder took anything. Nothing seemed missing. Nothing seemed out of place. But I know this much. Having a stranger break into your home is terrifying. But having that stranger watch you sleep at 8 years old, that's something else entirely. It was supposed to be my final delivery of the night. I was working at a small-town pizzeria called Tony's Pizza and Subs, just outside Silver Springs, Maine. One of my bosses, Frank DeLuca, was on shift with me. He handled the deliveries, deciding who went where. This last order was nothing special, just a couple of large pepperoni pizzas. Frank scribbled down the address and phone number on a slip of paper and handed it to me. This was back in 2009, and I didn't have a fancy smartphone with GPS. All I had was a cheap flip phone and an old map book to navigate my way around. The house was on Willow Creek Road, or something close to that. I don't remember the exact address or the name on the order, but what I do remember is how much trouble I had finding the place. It was way out in the middle of nowhere. Nothing but woods, farmland, and more woods. There were barely any streetlights, and the roads twisted in ways that made no sense. I pulled over a few times, flipping on the car's interior light as I checked the map again. It was frustrating, trying to match the tiny print to the dark, unfamiliar roads around me. Finally, I gave up and called the number Frank had written down. The phone rang, and rang. No voicemail, just an endless dial tone. After about the 10th ring, someone finally picked up, but they didn't say anything. I waited, then finally said, "Hello." A voice echoed back the same word, almost mimicking me. "Hello." It was a low, slow, almost whispered voice, deep but too soft, like someone trying to suppress a laugh. I cleared my throat and said, "Hey, this is the pizza guy. I'm having a hard time finding your place." The voice responded in the same slow, monotone drawl. "Driveway. Easy to miss. Dirt trail. Look for mailbox with no post." Something about his tone made my skin crawl, but I needed to finish this delivery. I kept driving, watching for a dirt trail. Eventually, I saw it. A narrow, almost invisible opening in the trees. A dented black mailbox sat crooked on the ground next to it. If the guy on the phone hadn't mentioned it, I would have never noticed. I turned onto the path, driving slowly, my tires crunching over dead leaves and loose gravel. The road was rough, the kind that made you feel like your car might get stuck at any second. After about 30 seconds, the house came into view. It was a small, one-story home, almost more of a shack. The roof sagged in places, and the windows were coated in grime. A dim, orange glow flickered inside. Maybe candlelight, maybe an old lamp. I pulled up beside the only other vehicle in sight, a rusted-out pickup truck with no plates. Grabbing the pizzas, I walked to the front door. No doorbell. I knocked. From inside, a record player scratched out an old 1930s jazz tune, soft, distorted, eerie. Footsteps. They stopped right behind the door. After about 10 seconds, the door creaked open just a crack. wide enough for me to see one eye staring at me from the darkness inside. I forced a nervous smile. "Hey, you ordered the pizza, right?" A long pause. Then, finally, the same voice from the phone call. "Oh yes, the pizza." The way he said it, like he had just remembered, sent a shiver up my spine. Another pause. "You have the cash?" I asked. The man didn't answer right away. Then slowly he said, "Yes, let me go get it." I heard his footsteps retreating into the house. The door stayed open, inching wider, revealing more of the dimly lit interior. The place looked ancient. The floor was covered with metal sheets, probably to keep from falling through rotted wood. The furniture was from another century, mismatched and broken. The record player sat in the corner, its huge brass horn crackling with the old music. But what really hit me was the smell. It reeked of rot, like something had died in there. I stood frozen at the door, waiting. Time stretched on. I knocked again. "Sir?" A voice called from another room. "Yes?" Then, "Would you mind coming into the kitchen, please?" Every instinct screamed at me to turn around and leave. I hesitated. "Oh, what?" The voice repeated it. "Come to the kitchen, please." I stepped 1 foot inside, and the floorboards sagged beneath my weight. I took another step, glancing toward the kitchen entrance. The voice had come from there. But before I could move closer, I noticed something. To my left, a long, narrow hallway stretched into darkness. And at the end of the hall, someone was dancing. I was 9 years old when this happened. Now I'm almost 25, but I still think about it. It was Christmas break, and my family had traveled to Idaho to visit my great-grandfather. His house sat on a beautiful stretch of land, vast fields, thick forests, and a quiet stillness that made it feel like a world of its own. It was a small, 2-story house, but it felt massive to me as a kid. This was also the first year my mom's new boyfriend came along. My parents had divorced that summer, and everything still felt different, unfamiliar. A day after we arrived, my aunt, uncle, and cousins, who lived 10 hours away, showed up to surprise us. They had originally said they couldn't come because of work, so it was a huge shock. At the time, my cousins and I were inseparable, so having them there made the trip even better. One night, my uncle, my stepdad, and my cousin from next door came over to visit. The adults sat in the living room, talking about things that didn't interest us. So my cousins, Sam, 9, Even, 12, Kennedy, 10, and I, decided to go down to the basement to play our favorite game, the monster game. The rules were simple. Sam and Even would hide in the pitch-black basement and pretend to be monsters. They'd make eerie noises to lure us in, and Kennedy and I had to find them. If we got too close, they would jump out and chase us. Our only safe zone was the top of the basement stairs. Looking back, it was a dumb game, but at the time, it was terrifying and a blast. That night, we started our usual routine. Sam and Even went downstairs first while Kennedy and I waited upstairs for 2 minutes. When time was up, we crept down into the darkness. The only light came from the soft glow of the pellet stove and the moonlight trickling through the small basement window. Even though we knew Sam and Even were just playing, the silence was unsettling. 5 minutes in, they jumped out with a roar, chasing us up the stairs. Screaming and laughing, we bolted to the top. We decided to play again. This time, I went first. As we descended into the darkness, we heard a loud thud, like someone had smacked the wall. I jumped but kept moving forward. Then, I saw it. A shadowy figure outside the basement window. I froze. Without speaking, I threw my arm out to stop Kennedy from walking forward. She huffed, irritated. "Why'd you stop?" I didn't answer. I just pointed. Kennedy's expression shifted the second she saw it. She whispered, "Sam, Even, stop playing around. There's someone outside." Sam's voice came from across the room. "You guys are lying." They didn't believe us. "Guys, seriously," I insisted. "Look at the window, above the TV." Finally, Sam and Even emerged from their hiding spot beneath the ping-pong table. They turned toward the window and froze. Even laughed nervously. "It's probably Uncle Stan. He's just outside smoking." But I knew it wasn't Uncle Stan. He always smoked on the front porch, never back here. Sam groaned. "Then it's probably Grandpa checking the house. You know how he is, always fixing something." "If you're so worried, go check," Even added. "Fine." I climbed the stairs, pretending to be casual. But when I reached the living room, my stomach dropped. Everyone was there. Grandpa, Uncle Stan, every adult who was supposed to be in the house. That meant whoever was outside wasn't family. I didn't want to say anything, afraid they wouldn't believe me. So, I just turned around and went back downstairs. The second I saw my cousins, I whispered, "Guys, everyone is in the living room. No one is missing." Their expressions changed. The bravado was gone. Kennedy started to cry. I hushed her. "Don't make too much noise." We rushed to the top of the stairs, debating what to do. Sam and Even, being boys, suggested dumb ideas like grabbing a gun and shooting the guy. But none of us wanted to tell the adults. After 5 minutes, we cautiously went back down. The figure was gone. We assumed he had just walked away and tried to move on. No one wanted to play the monster game anymore, so we turned on the light and started playing ping pong instead. And that's when we noticed it. The basement window was open. A chill ran down my spine. Had it been open the whole time? I looked at the furniture. My heart stopped. There was a man, sitting in one of the armchairs, watching us. He looked like he was in his 40s. His clothes were ragged, his hair unkempt, and he was just sitting there, smiling. The second he started to stand up, I screamed, "Run!" We bolted up the stairs, slamming the door behind us. We didn't stop running until we crashed into the living room, sobbing. "There's a man in the basement," I screamed. The adults sprang into action. My uncle, a cop, grabbed one of my grandfather's guns and stormed downstairs. We sat in tense silence, clinging to our moms, waiting for him to return. Minutes later, he came back. No one's there. But outside in the snow, there were footprints. They led from the window to the driveway, disappearing into the night. Nothing was stolen. The man had just been watching us, waiting. Grandpa was upset. He had always believed his basement windows were secure, but he was grateful we were safe. That night, none of us could sleep. I curled up next to my mom, shaking. We never played the monster game again. I haven't been back to my grandpa's house in years, but even now, at almost 25, I still refuse to go into any basement alone. Even after all this time, I still feel like someone is watching. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. When my friends and I rented a beach house in Florida, I never expected things to take such a terrifying turn. It was the four of us, John, Travis, Liam, and me, crammed into a car, making the long drive down. The house itself was in a prime location, directly on the beach, with the bay on one side of the street and the ocean in our backyard. The houses on this road were spaced apart, creating a sense of privacy. Some were huge luxury homes, while others, like ours, were more modest but cozy. As we unloaded the car, I noticed how empty the road was. Not a single car passed by. Inside, the house had a casual beach theme. Walls decorated with seashells, ocean paintings, and even a surfboard propped in the corner behind the TV. The best part was the back deck, which opened directly onto the sand. Just 2 steps down, and you were on the beach. We each claimed our bedrooms, and I was lucky enough to get one with a view of the ocean. After settling in, we wasted no time hitting the beach. The water was perfect, and we spent hours swimming, playing football, and just soaking in the sun. There was hardly anyone else around, just an older couple far down the shore. That evening, we went out to eat and bar hopped in the nearby town. By the time we Ubered back, it was late, but we weren't ready to call it a night. Still buzzing from drinks, we decided to go back onto the beach, playing late-night football under the moonlight. That's when I noticed it, something in the water. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but no, there was someone standing in the ocean. The moonlight reflected off the waves, just enough to make out the figure, waist deep in the water, motionless. "What the hell is that?" I muttered. My friends followed my gaze. "Dude, is that a person?" John asked. It was eerie, sure, but not necessarily alarming. Maybe it was just a local enjoying a midnight swim. We tried to ignore it and went back to the deck, cracking open more beers and talking. One by one, my friends started heading inside for the night until it was just John and me sitting out there. I kept glancing toward the shoreline, unable to shake my curiosity. After a while, I spotted someone standing on the beach. They weren't swimming anymore. They were standing completely still, facing us. I tried to brush it off. "Maybe it's one of the neighbors," I said. John, however, was facing directly toward them. As time passed, he shifted uncomfortably. "They're still just standing there, dude." I stood up and took another look. He was right. The person hadn't moved an inch. Something about it felt wrong. I hesitated, then called out, "Hey, everything okay?" John groaned. "Why the hell would you do that?" I didn't know what I expected. Maybe a wave, a nod, any response at all. But the person said nothing. They didn't even flinch. John and I exchanged a look. "Yeah, I'm done," he muttered. "Let's go inside." Something outside my window. By the time we got inside, Travis and Liam were already passed out. John and I decided to call it a night too. As I got ready for bed, I took one last look out my window, a final glance at the ocean before crashing for the night. But my breath caught in my throat. The person was now standing directly in front of the deck. Not on the shoreline, not halfway down the beach. Right in front of our house. And worse, they were facing my window. A chill crawled up my spine. The figure was slightly built, but tall, probably a man. I whispered John's name, but got no response. Screw it. I ran to his room and banged on the door. "John, get out here." He opened the door, groggy. "What?" I dragged him to my window. "Look." But when we peered outside, the person was gone. I swore up and down I had just seen them standing there, but there was nothing now. Just the beach, empty and quiet. John didn't doubt me. "Dude, let's just lock everything up," he said. I shut my blinds, but as I crawled into bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still out there. I wasn't sure when I drifted off, but I woke up to the sound of knocking. Not at the door. At my bedroom window. My whole body locked up. A few seconds passed. Then, another knock. Lighter this time. Almost teasing. My pulse pounded in my ears. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I was too terrified to lift the blinds. I wanted to yell out, "Oh, is it?" But some deep, primal instinct told me not to. Instead, I jumped out of bed and ran to the living room. "Wake up! Everyone get up!" I shouted, my voice shaking. One by one, my friends groggily stumbled out of their rooms. I grabbed John's arm. Someone was just knocking on my window. We rushed outside, turning on the deck lights. But the beach was empty. We checked the front and sides of the house. Nothing. No footprints in the sand. No signs of anyone. John and I explained everything to Travis and Liam. The figure in the water, the person watching us, the knocks at my window. We decided to leave the lights on for the rest of the night. The next morning, John and I walked to the two nearest houses, asking if they had seen or heard anything weird. One neighbor, a middle-aged man, gave us a look of genuine concern. "You know," he said, rubbing his chin, "just last week, someone knocked on my door in the middle of the night. When I asked who it was, they didn't answer. Just kept knocking. I never opened it." John and I exchanged a glance. It had to be connected. Whoever had been out there last night had been lurking around before. We spent the rest of the day trying to shake it off, exploring town, hitting the beach, going to bars. Nothing else happened, and we left the next morning. But even now, years later, I still think about it. Who was that person? What did they want? And worst of all, what would I have seen if I had lifted the blinds? A long time ago, when my sister and I were young, we went to visit our aunt for her birthday. Our parents had planned a surprise party for her, and the house was buzzing with excitement. But for my sister and me, it was a little boring, so we decided to step outside and walk around her quiet street to get some fresh air. It was a cold, dark night, and her neighborhood was eerily silent. There weren't many houses nearby, and the whole area felt deserted. As we walked, we stopped in our tracks when we heard voices, children's voices, faint but unmistakable. My sister was 8 at the time, and I was 14. We looked around, expecting to see other kids playing, but there was no one there. The street was completely empty. Feeling unsettled but trying to stay calm, we decided to keep walking. That's when I tripped on something and fell hard to the ground. When we looked down, we saw railroad tracks running across the path. The strange thing is, they hadn't been there a moment ago. My sister, already scared, started to cry. I did my best to reassure her, telling her everything was fine and that we'd head back home. But the truth was, I had no idea where we were. I didn't want to admit it to her and make her more upset, but I was completely lost. As we stood there, trying to figure out what to do, 2 children appeared out of nowhere. A little girl and a little boy stood in front of us, their pale faces illuminated by the dim light of the moon. Something about them sent a chill down my spine. They looked almost ghostly, like they didn't belong in this world. Trying to stay calm, I asked their names. They said their names were Sarah and Jack. I asked if they knew the way back to the road that led to my aunt's house, and they nodded. Without saying much else, they began to lead us. I clung to my sister's hand as we followed them, feeling both relieved and uneasy. The children walked us right to the street, and when I saw my aunt's house in the distance, I felt a rush of gratitude. I turned to them and asked if they wanted to come inside, but they didn't answer. They just stood there staring at us. I ran inside to tell my parents about the kids who had helped us. I was so thankful, but when I pulled my mom to the door to show her, they were gone. We searched for them, but it was like they had vanished into thin air. When we told my aunt what had happened, her face went pale. "What were their names again?" she asked. "Sarah and Jack," I replied. That's when she told us a story I'll never forget. She said that many years ago there had been a terrible accident near those railroad tracks. A school bus had broken down right on the tracks, and the doors jammed shut. The driver and all 17 children on board were trapped. Moments later, a train came barreling down the tracks, and there was no time to escape. Everyone on the bus died in the crash. My aunt explained that ever since the tragedy, people have reported seeing the children's spirits. They're said to push cars off the tracks if a train is coming, trying to save others from meeting the same fate. Some streets around here are even named after them, she added quietly. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That night, I couldn't bring myself to say much. My sister and I sat in silence, replaying everything that had happened. The next morning, as we were leaving, I saw something that sent a shiver through me. 2 of the nearby street signs had names on them, Sarah and Jack. It was real. It had to be. From that day on, I thought of them not as ghosts, but as angels. It was a man, his back turned to me, moving in slow, exaggerated motions. His arms caressed his own body, hands dragging over his chest, his neck, his face. His movements were unnatural, like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. A deep sickness curdled in my gut. I turned away, forcing my eyes back to the kitchen, and that's when I saw him again. The man from the door, his face barely peeking out from behind the wall, just one eye visible watching me. My breath caught in my throat. I forced a smile, trying to act normal. "Hey, so you have the money?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he started laughing. except it wasn't really a laugh. It was a deep, breathy giggle, barely above a whisper, the kind of sound a child might make while hiding in a closet. Then suddenly, his voice shifted, louder, commanding. Randall. The name boomed through the house, shattering the soft tension. My blood turned to ice. I took a step backward toward the door. As I did, I glanced back down the hallway. The dancing man had stopped. He was facing me now, standing completely still. I turned and bolted. I slammed the door behind me and sprinted to my car, still holding the damn pizzas. Fumbling with the keys, I threw them onto the passenger seat and jammed them into the ignition. My hands were shaking as I threw the car into reverse. As I backed up, I stole one last glance at the house. The front door was wide open again. My chest tightened. Were they watching me? Were they already outside? I didn't wait to find out. I tore out of the driveway, gravel kicking up behind me as I sped back toward town. By the time I made it back to Tony's, I was shaking. Frank took one look at me and asked, "Dude, what the hell happened?" When I told the guys what happened, they laughed, said it sounded like some messed up horror movie. Maybe it was. But I'll tell you this, I never stepped inside a stranger's house again after that night. Because whatever was happening in that house, it wasn't normal. And I don't think they ever planned on paying for that pizza. I used to deliver for Uber Eats back when I was struggling to pay off my student loans. I was living with my parents in Charleston, South Carolina, trying to hustle every penny I could. Late night deliveries were my specialty. Less traffic, higher pay, and fewer people wasting my time. That night was no different. I picked up an order from a fast food joint in Wilmington, North Carolina, about 20 minutes from the drop-off location. As I drove, I noticed fewer streetlights, fewer houses, and eventually, no other cars at all. I was heading toward the rural outskirts, the kind of place where a wrong turn could mean you wouldn't be found until morning. I turned off the main road onto a narrow side road, my headlights illuminating a dead-end sign. My gut twisted. I didn't like it, but I kept going. The house at the very end of the road was my destination. Every other house on the stretch was dark, pitch black. Even the house I was delivering to had no lights on, not a single one. I kept my car headlights on just so I could see where I was stepping. The overgrown grass brushed against my legs as I walked up to the front door, my phone flashlight the only thing guiding me. Something felt wrong. I pressed the doorbell, but heard nothing. I knocked. Nothing. The order was marked contact delivery, meaning the customer had to receive it in person. I pulled out my phone and sent a message. "Hey, I'm at the front door. Can you confirm the address?" The moment I saw the read receipt, my skin crawled. A response came almost immediately. "Give me a second." I replied, "Okay." He read it. And then, silence. I waited, eyes flicking between the windows, expecting a light to flicker on, but nothing changed. I texted again. "Can you type out your address? Just to confirm." The 3 dots popped up. He was typing, but it was taking a while. Then the message came through. "I see you. You're at the right house." A shiver ran down my spine. "I see you." I instinctively glanced over my shoulder. The street was empty. That's when I noticed something even more unsettling. There were no cars in the driveway. No cars anywhere. Something wasn't right. I messaged again, trying to keep my voice steady. "If you can see me, what kind of car do you see outside?" The reply came seconds later. "I see your light." That was all the confirmation I needed. I wasn't delivering to a house. I was walking into a trap. I started to back away from the porch, inching toward my car as discreetly as I could. My heart was pounding. Then I heard it. A voice. From the darkness. A male voice. "Over here." It wasn't coming from the house. It was coming from the trees. I whipped my flashlight around, trying to see who had spoken. Nothing. Just the shadows. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm leaving the food on the porch," I called out. "Have a good night." I wasn't waiting around. I turned and walked, fast, back to my car, forcing myself not to break into a run. I needed to act natural, like I wasn't scared, like I wasn't on the verge of panic. Then I heard it. PSSSSSHHHH. A long, sharp hissing sound. No, I knew that sound. I spun around and felt my stomach drop. My tires, both left side tires, were slashed, leaking air fast. I ran to the car and checked the right side. Same thing. I was stranded. I jumped into the car and locked the doors, my fingers fumbling to call 911. Then I saw movement. 4 shadows, moving closer. 1 at every window. They wore masks. I screamed. One of them slammed a fist against my window. "Get out. Now." My hands were shaking. I didn't know if they had a gun, but I knew one thing. I wasn't driving away. Not with 4 flats. I was trapped. I did the only thing I could think of. I raised my hands. "If I give you everything, will you let me go?" I yelled. One of them nodded. "Everything. Now." I unlocked the door. The second I did, they ripped me out of the car. I hit the ground hard. Then came the kicks. At least 3 of them were beating me, stomping on me. I curled up, arms shielding my head, as they took everything. My wallet, my watch, my phone, even my shoes. They tore through my glove compartment, grabbing whatever they could find. Then, as suddenly as it started, it was over. I lay there, gasping for breath, as they ran into the darkness, disappearing as if they had never been there at all. I must have blacked out because the next thing I knew, I was alone. My car keys, gone. My phone, gone. I had nothing. I forced myself up, every inch of my body screaming in pain, and stumbled toward the only light I could see, a small house in the distance, closer to the main road. I banged on the door, barely able to speak. A woman's voice answered through the door. "Who is it?" I managed to say, "I was robbed. I need to use a phone." Silence. Then, the lock clicked. She let me in. I called the police. Then roadside assistance. Then my dad. When the officers arrived, they took my statement and searched the area. But it was too late. The men were long gone. And the house, vacant. It had been for sale for months. The next day, detectives traced the Uber Eats account back to someone named Logan, but when they found him, he had no idea what I was talking about. His phone and wallet had been stolen the week before. Whoever did this used his stolen info to set me up, and they got away with it. My car insurance covered the tires, but everything else, gone. I took the loss, the pain, and the lesson. I quit doing deliveries for months. When I finally started again, I only worked in daylight. Because that night taught me one thing. Not all deliveries are worth the tip. And some, you don't come back from. Hey everyone, I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way. My family owns a secluded cabin in Vermont, nestled at the top of a hill and surrounded by dense woods. In the winter, we use it for skiing and snowboarding. The nearest neighbors live up the road, but they're far enough away that you can't see their houses from our property. Just outside the house, we had a large shed where we store our snowboarding gear, shovels, rakes, and other equipment. The shed stays locked whenever we aren't there, but when we visit, we typically leave it unlocked. We've never worried much about someone stealing from us while we're there. The cabin itself is spacious, with 3 floors. The 3rd floor is a loft-style master bedroom, strictly reserved for my parents. My siblings and I aren't allowed up there. That weekend, I took Melissa, a girl I had been seeing, up to the cabin. She had never snowboarded before, so I planned to teach her the basics before taking her to the mountain. Since our property sits on a steep hill, we had built a custom slope for sledding and snowboarding. I figured it would be perfect for her first lesson. We suited up in our gear and headed to the top of the hill. I slowly descended first, demonstrating the basic movements. When it was her turn, she immediately fell, as expected. But she was determined. Each time she fell, she got back up. After several runs, she was improving and we were having fun. Then, a voice. A man's voice. Hello. It came from the woods. Melissa and I both froze. We scanned the trees expecting to see someone, but there was no one there. The forest was silent, the snow-covered ground untouched. You'd think it would be easy to spot movement when everything is blanketed in white, but we saw nothing. I hesitated before calling out, "Is someone there?" Silence. Melissa's expression darkened, and I could tell she was uneasy. "Let's go inside," she said. I nodded, trying to shake off the weird feeling. Back at the cabin, I reassured her. It was probably just a hiker passing through. That was the least scary possibility. We spent the afternoon at my favorite local diner, then grabbed groceries for the next few days. By the time we got back, it was getting dark. We had dinner, then went out back to sit by the fire pit. As we sat there, music playing softly, the warm glow of the fire flickering in the dark, we heard it. Footsteps. They weren't ours. They were slow, deliberate, crunching in the snow just beyond the tree line. I immediately turned off the music, but with the crackling fire, it wasn't dead silent. I couldn't tell if whatever we heard was still there. I grabbed Melissa's phone and used both of our flashlights, pointing them into the woods. "Is someone there?" I called out. Melissa grabbed my arm. "Please, let's just go inside." The anxiety in her voice was enough to convince me. We locked the door behind us and didn't step outside again that night. The next morning, I woke up to Melissa getting out of bed. I was still groggy, so I let myself drift back to sleep. When I finally woke up again, she was still gone. I checked my phone. 9:00 a.m. Confused, I got up and walked to the window, pulling back the curtain. That's when I saw it. The shed door was open. Even worse, there was breath. I could see puffs of white air escaping from behind the shed door. Someone was standing in there. I frowned, assuming it was Melissa, though I had no idea why she'd be in the freezing shed so early. I pushed open the window and yelled, "Melissa?" Her reply came from inside the cabin, behind me. I whipped around, heart racing. She was standing in the living room staring at me. Goosebumps erupted across my skin. I turned back to the window and yelled outside, "Yo, who's in my shed?" No response. A few seconds later, I slammed the window shut and ran into the living room. Melissa stood frozen, her eyes wide. I followed her gaze to the back door. Through the glass, I saw someone dressed in black sprinting toward the woods. I rushed to put on my boots, but by the time I was ready to chase him, he had vanished among the trees. We checked the shed, but nothing was stolen. The only evidence left behind was a trail of footprints leading from the woods to the shed, and then back into the woods. I wasn't about to follow them. That night, we decided to skip the fire pit. After a steak dinner and a movie, we went straight to bed, making sure every door and window was locked. But sleep didn't last long. At some point in the middle of the night, I woke up to Melissa shaking me. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. "Listen," she whispered. For a moment, all I heard was silence. Then, "Help me." The voice was slow, drawn out, and eerie. It came from outside. Melissa clutched my arm, trembling. "It's him. It has to be him." Then we heard it again. "Help me." I crept to the window, my heart pounding. Melissa grabbed my wrist. "Don't. I'm just going to take a peek." I gently lifted one corner of the curtain. Blackness. I cracked the window open, just enough to listen. Then, footsteps. Fast. Getting closer. Something, or someone, was charging toward the cabin. I slammed the window shut just as the footsteps reached the wall beneath it. Then, knock, knock. Melissa let out a muffled sob, hiding under the blankets. My pulse hammered in my ears. We stayed completely still. No movement. No sound. Then, silence. No more knocking. No more voices. No more footsteps. We sat awake for hours, listening, waiting. Nothing. At some point, exhaustion took over and we both drifted off. The next morning, I checked outside. And that's when I saw it. Footprints. Circling the cabin. Some people go through things so terrifying at a young age that they never forget them. I'm one of those people. I must have been 7 or 8 years old when it happened. My older brother and I grew up in a broken home. Our mom raised us alone. Our dad was a deadbeat who disappeared from our lives without a trace. She worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat, sometimes pulling night shifts, and on those nights, our grandma would stay over to watch us. My brother, Austin, was 2 years younger than me. We weren't exactly well off, but we had each other. Our house was small, just enough for the 3 of us, and with Mom working so much, we got by the best we could. But the neighborhood we lived in, it wasn't great. It was a night like any other. I don't remember if it was a school night or a weekend, but I do remember I was in the living room with Grandma. She was watching TV while I sat at my little table, playing with Legos. I must have been making too much noise because I distinctly remember her saying, "Alex, quiet down." Austin had already gone to bed, and my bedtime was coming up, probably 9:30, which made me think it was a weekend. Otherwise, Mom wouldn't have let me stay up that late. The house had a simple layout, an open living room, dining area, and kitchen, all connected. Then there was a hallway leading to 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. Mom's room was at the end of the hall, mine in the middle, and Austin's was closest to the living room. When Grandma stayed over, she always slept in Mom's bed. Eventually, bedtime rolled around. Grandma always went to sleep early too, so after tucking me in, she went to the bathroom to brush her teeth before heading to bed. I had never been afraid of the dark, never believed in monsters. My mom used to say I was a fearless kid, but that night, something woke me up, something unnatural. It started with creaking in the hallway. The old wooden floors groaned under the weight of someone walking. At first, I thought it was Grandma heading to the bathroom, but the footsteps didn't stop. They kept pacing back and forth. Then came the whispering. I sat up in bed, frozen. At first, I thought Grandma was talking to Austin, but something felt wrong. The whispers were too fast, too hushed, like someone muttering frantically to themselves. I crept toward my door, pressing my ear against it. The whispering grew clearer, but the words didn't make sense. And then, silence. I slowly turned the doorknob and peeked into the hallway. And I saw her. A tall, skeletally thin woman, completely naked, leaning against the wall. Her long, stringy black hair hung over her face as she whispered feverishly to herself. Her back was to me, her bony arms pressed against the wall as if she was praying to something unseen. And then, her head snapped around. I will never forget that moment for as long as I live. Her neck twisted at an unnatural angle, her hollow eyes locking onto mine. Her face was pale, almost gray, her lips cracked and stretched into something that might have been a smile. Or a snarl. I screamed. I slammed my door shut and threw myself against it. And then came the pounding. Bang, bang, bang. The door shook as the woman shrieked, her voice like a rabid animal. "Jeremy," she screamed. "Jeremy, open the door. My name isn't Jeremy. I didn't know a Jeremy." I could hear her scratching at the wood, her nails raking against it like claws. I screamed for Grandma, my voice raw with terror. Then, a blood-curdling scream from the hallway. "Grandma." I heard her voice, sharp and furious. "Get the hell out of here." The woman let out an ear-piercing shriek. "Where is Jeremy?" And then silence. I was crying, barely breathing. I stayed curled against the door until I heard Grandma unlocking it from the other side. When she stepped in, her hands were shaking, but she pulled me into a tight hug. Austin had woken up from the chaos and was sobbing in the corner. The woman was gone. The police arrived within minutes. Grandma had somehow managed to shove the woman out the front door while dialing 911 at the same time. To this day, I have no idea how she did it. She was in her mid-60s, but that night, she was the toughest person in the world. The officers searched the area, but she had disappeared into the darkness. One of the cops told Grandma the same thing they always say in neighborhoods like ours. She was probably on something. Maybe she was. Maybe she was just some drug-out lunatic who wandered into our unlocked home. Maybe. But I know what I saw. The way her head snapped around like a puppet. No human moves like that. The way her voice echoed, layered, like more than one person was speaking. The way the air felt suffocating, heavy, wrong. Something else was in that house that night. I didn't sleep alone for months after that, and not long after we moved. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. I'm 20 years old now, but at the time of this story, I had just turned 19. I live in Silver Springs, Montana, a quiet little town where nothing much happens, except when the college kids roll in for the fall and spring semesters. Silver Springs is home to Montana Western University, a well-respected school with a reputation for being one of the rowdiest party spots in the region. Once the semester starts, the once peaceful streets get flooded with students looking to drink, party, and let loose. I worked as a bicycle delivery guy for Tony's Stubbs, a job I still have to this day. This particular event took place on a Tuesday or Wednesday night in late April or early May. I can't remember exactly. My usual shift ran from 7:00 p.m. to 2:00 a.m., and since Tony's was one of the only places open that late, aside from the bars, our store was constantly swarmed with drunk, rowdy college kids looking for food. Deliveries would pile up nonstop, which was annoying as hell, but also meant a lot of tips, so I put up with it. This was my last delivery of the night, just as 2:00 a.m. was about to roll around. The moment I saw it pop up in the system, I groaned. I was exhausted, ready to clock out, and the thought of one last delivery made me want to slam my head against the counter. But I had no choice. The address was familiar. I had delivered there before, so I immediately grabbed my bag, hopped on my bike, and took off. The only reason we used bicycles for deliveries instead of cars was because the roads were often congested during college season. Bikes let us maneuver through traffic faster. I pedaled hard, pushing myself to get there in under 10 minutes. When I finally arrived at the house, I knocked loudly on the door. No answer. I knocked again, this time even harder. Still nothing. Now I was starting to get pissed. If no one answered, I'd have to take the order back to the store, meaning I just wasted my time for nothing. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number on the receipt. No answer. Just as I was about to call the store and report it as a no-show, I heard something. A rustling sound. It was faint, coming from the bushes directly across the street from me. At first, I assumed it was just the wind or maybe a stray cat, but when I glanced over, I felt my stomach drop. There, crouched behind the bushes, was a figure. It was hard to make out any details in the dim streetlights, but I could tell it was a person, a man. He was low to the ground, completely still, just watching me, staring. A suffocating dread washed over me. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I forced myself to act normal, pretending not to notice him, while pounding on the door as hard as I could, desperate for someone to answer. My mind was racing. Was this some kind of setup? A trap? I took a quick glance back at the bushes. He was still there, still watching. The air felt thick. Every instinct in my body screamed, "Get out." Then, finally, the door opened. A half-asleep guy in boxers squinted at me, looking confused and irritated. I rushed through my explanation, telling him about the order. He mumbled that he didn't order anything, but that it was probably his roommate. "Hold on, I'll go wake him up," he said groggily before turning and heading upstairs. Not even a minute later, I heard it again, rustling. I turned my head slightly and my heart nearly stopped. The man had moved closer. No longer crouched, he was standing now, half hidden in the shadows. I still couldn't make out his face, but I knew he was watching me. I considered stepping inside, just for safety, but that would mean leaving my bike unattended. If he was some thief looking for an easy target, that would be the perfect opportunity. But what if he wasn't just a thief? What if this was something much worse? The guy upstairs finally returned, shaking his head. Dude's passed out cold. Door's locked. He won't wake up. I didn't care. I just wanted to be gone. You can sign for him, I said, practically shoving the receipt at him. He hesitated. There wasn't a tip charged to the order, but I didn't give a damn about a tip at that point. Please, I insisted, just sign it. After some grumbling, he finally scribbled his name and grabbed the food. The second the door shut, I bolted for my bike. I threw my leg over, snapped up the kickstand, and was just about to push off when Rustel Feyudi, the man lunged from the bushes. I whipped my head to the side and saw him charging straight for me. He was wearing jeans, boots, and a black hoodie with the hood pulled up. But what sent me into full panic mode was the mask covering his face. I couldn't see anything but his eyes, and though I can't say for sure, I swear he was holding a blade. I had one shot. I couldn't turn around. He'd reached me before I could even get my bike moving, and every street around me led to a dead end. The only way out. The bike trail. It was close. It was dark. But if I could make it there, I had a chance. I gripped the handlebars, took a deep breath, and pedled like hell. I raced toward the entrance of the unlit trail, my legs burning, my chest tight. The moment my tires hit the path, I was swallowed by darkness. My bike had no light, but I didn't care. I listened. No footsteps. I risked a glance back. No one there. But I didn't slow down. Not for a second. It wasn't until I burst out the other side of the trail, back onto a main road, that I finally let myself breathe. I pushed on, speeding all the way back to the store. When I finally made it, I could barely catch my breath. My hands were shaking. My shirt was drenched in sweat. I never told my boss, never told my coworkers, and I never called the police. What could I even say? I just clocked out, threw my bike in my car, and drove home. That was the last late-night shift I ever worked, and ever since that night, I carry a knife with me on every delivery. People say Silver Springs is a safe little town, but that night proved something to me. Anything can happen, anywhere, to anyone, at any time. And some nights, I still wonder, what would have happened if I hadn't pedaled fast enough? It was sometime between 2013 and 2014. My little brother Daniel was about 7 or 8 at the time. We had just moved into a new house in a small town in Oregon, closer to his school and with a cheaper rent. It was an older house, but charming in its own way, with creaky wooden floors and a cozy fireplace perfect for the cold winters. Daniel had one favorite toy, a Batman car. It was one of those battery-operated ones that lit up and made sounds when you pressed a button. He played with it constantly, rarely letting it out of his sight. One afternoon, after playing outside in the backyard, Daniel ran inside excited. "I found something," he announced, holding something small in his hand. My mom and I leaned in. It was a school photo, a wallet-sized picture of a young boy, the kind you get when parents pay extra for school pictures. The edges were worn, dirty, and creased, so much so that the year was no longer visible. "Someone must have lost it," my mom said, taking a closer look. "Poor kid." Daniel shook his head, his voice oddly certain. "No, this is Buddy." I frowned. "Who?" "Buddy," he repeated, pointing at the photo. "He's my friend." A chill ran down my spine. My brother was never good at making friends, and as far as I knew, he hadn't met any new kids since we moved in. I brushed it off, assuming he must have found the picture while playing and made up a name for the boy in it. That night, around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of whispering. Groggy and annoyed, I sat up listening. It was Daniel. I got up and pushed open his door. He was sitting up straight in bed, talking in a hushed tone, to no one. His room was dim, but I could see he was facing the small chair in the corner of his room, as if someone were sitting there. "Danny," I whispered, "go to sleep." He didn't even flinch, just slowly turned his head toward me, eyes wide, as if I had interrupted something. Without another word, he laid down and pulled the blanket over his head. The next morning, my mom mentioned something strange. "Has Danny been getting up at night?" she asked while making breakfast. I hesitated. Not exactly, but I heard him talking the other night. She sighed. "He's been acting weird. Keeps mentioning Buddy. I think he's got an imaginary friend." I shrugged. "Yeah, maybe." But something about it didn't sit right. The toy. That night, I was lying in bed when I heard a sudden, loud beep beep. Daniel's Batman car. I groaned and threw off the blanket. If he was playing this late, our parents would kill him. But when I stepped into his room, he was fast asleep, curled up in bed. The toy car sat across the room, wheels spinning, flashing its red lights in the darkness. I walked over, picked it up, and flipped the switch off. The next morning, over breakfast, I casually mentioned the toy. "Yeah, I had to turn it off last night. You shouldn't be playing with it when you're supposed to be sleeping." Daniel frowned. I didn't. I looked at him. "What do you mean?" Buddy was playing. I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. "Danny, there's no Buddy." His expression didn't change. "He likes my Batman car." Over the next few nights, it kept happening. Every night, beep beep. In the middle of the night, the toy car would go off, even though we made sure it was turned off before bed. My dad insisted it had a motion sensor, but I knew that wasn't true. It was just a regular toy. One night, my sister and I were lying in bed talking, trying to distract ourselves from how unsettling things had become. Then we heard it. Beep beep. We both froze. Our eyes snapped toward the open doorway. And then, in the dim light of the hallway, we saw it. Daniel's Batman car rolled past our door, on its own. We screamed. Running into our parents' room, we babbled over each other about what had happened. My dad stormed into Daniel's room, convinced he had been playing a prank on us. "That's not funny, Daniel," he snapped. Daniel sat up in bed, rubbing his eyes. "It wasn't me," he mumbled. "Then how did the toy move by itself?" My mom asked, her voice uneasy. Daniel looked at us, sleepy and innocent. Buddy wanted to play. That was it. The toy went straight into the trash, batteries removed. My parents didn't entertain the idea of ghosts or imaginary friends anymore. The next morning, Daniel was playing with the Batman car again. My mom's face turned pale. "Danny, I thought we threw that away. Buddy got it for me." I felt like ice water had been poured down my back. My dad grabbed the toy, broke it into pieces, and threw it out again, this time for good. The final sign. Things felt normal again for about a week. No more late-night whispering, no more toy sounds. We started to believe maybe it really had been just a weird coincidence. Then, one evening, my mom was in the kitchen, using our George Foreman grill to cook dinner. She stepped into the living room for a moment to ask us something when, crash. We all jumped. Running into the kitchen, we found the grill on the other side of the floor, as if it had been violently thrown. My mom stood frozen. I wasn't even near it. My dad tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was too close to the edge. No, my mom cut in. I put it right in the center of the counter. Silence. None of us said what we were thinking, but we all felt it. Buddy wasn't just an imaginary friend. A year later, we moved. Nothing like that ever happened in our new home. But to this day, I still wonder, what if Buddy wasn't imaginary at all? When I was a kid, I had an irrational fear of our basement. Though, if I'm being honest, the place was terrifying. It was a big, unfinished basement, cold concrete floors, dim overhead bulbs, and that stale, musty smell that always lingered in the air. Right in the middle of the basement sat an old, L-shaped couch, facing a wooden support column and our giant, clunky box TV. The thing barely worked, but it was where my brothers and I played our video games. The entire basement was laid out in a circular shape, wrapping around the couch. One corner had a dusty booth and an old table. Another had a rundown, abandoned bar, the kind you'd find in a 1970s home. Behind the bar was the door to the laundry room, a place I actively avoided. The third corner, closest to the stairs, led to my dad's makeshift workout space, filled with rusty dumbbells and a half-broken treadmill. My dad rented out the upstairs to an old woman named Ruth, so we only had access to the main floor and the basement. He mostly spent his time in the living room, so my brothers and I were left with the basement for our gaming. I was the youngest of 3 brothers, around 6 to 8 years old when this happened. That night, my brothers weren't home, probably off at a friend's house, so it was just my mom and me. Dad was likely at work. I hated being in the basement alone, but I wanted to play my games. As I crept down the stairs, the heavy wooden basement door slowly inched shut behind me. That door was the worst. It never stayed open unless something was wedged in front of it. The moment it latched, I already felt cut off from the rest of the house, completely alone. I curled up on the couch and started playing, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling creeping up my spine. Every little noise made me pause the game and glance around. There were always strange sounds coming from the laundry room, pipes creaking, the water heater clicking on, but I had learned to tune them out. But then, I heard something different. It wasn't the usual hum of the washer or the groan of the pipes. It was the distinct sound of something falling. A solid thump, followed by a softer bounce. My stomach dropped. I jumped off the couch and bolted upstairs, calling for my mom. "There's someone in the basement," I gasped, clutching her sleeve. She frowned but didn't look particularly alarmed. "Honey, no one's down there," she assured me. But when she saw the genuine terror on my face, she sighed and followed me back down. She pushed open the laundry room door, turned on the light, and glanced inside. "See? No one's here," she said, shutting the door again. I still felt uneasy, but her presence made me feel safer. I nodded, and she went back upstairs. After a while, I got hungry, so I went up to grab a snack. By then, it was dark outside, which only made the basement feel even more ominous. The 2 small windows near the ceiling let in some daylight earlier, but now it was pitch black. Still, I forced myself to go back down. At some point, the heater in the laundry room clicked on, but this time it was louder than usual, like a deep, growling roar. Then I noticed something. The laundry room door was open. I froze. Mom had closed that door. I was sure of it. I got up, heart hammering in my chest, and crept toward it. The inside of the room was pure darkness, an inky void beyond the threshold. I didn't want to look inside. I didn't want to turn on the light. I just wanted to shut the door. Taking a deep breath, I ran forward, slammed it shut, and sprinted back to the couch. I sat there, gripping the controller, trying to convince myself I was just being paranoid. Then, a voice spoke behind me. A man's voice. At first, my brain didn't process it. It was so soft, so casual, like it belonged there. "My God, how you've grown." I turned around. In the corner of the basement, in the booth where no one should have been sitting, was a man. He was pale, deathly pale, his skin almost gray. His body was thin, almost skeletal, and his posture was slouched, like he barely had the strength to sit upright. One of his arms rested on the table, his chin propped up by his hand. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. He smiled. "Your mother won't let me see you guys," he said softly, his voice filled with something between sorrow and amusement. His body shifted. Slowly, he pushed himself up from the booth, his movements unnatural, wrong. His bones seemed to creak as he stood, hunched over, staring at me with sunken, hollow eyes. My paralysis shattered. I screamed. I didn't think. I just ran. I tore up the stairs, my voice shrieking for my mom. 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 I slammed the basement door shut, locked it, and backed away, my entire body shaking. There's a man down there. I sobbed. My mom's face went pale. She grabbed the phone and called 911. Everything after that is a blur. I don't remember the minutes leading up to the police arriving. I don't remember what I said to them. But I do remember a group of officers storming down into the basement. They found him. They found my uncle. My estranged uncle. My mom's brother. He had been excommunicated from our family years ago. A convicted child predator. Someone my parents never wanted anywhere near us. Someone my mom had cut off completely. And he had been living in our basement. Hiding. Watching. I didn't even recognize him. The last time I had seen him, I had been a baby. He was arrested that night. Went back to prison for another 4 years for yet another crime. We never saw him again. We don't know where he is now. And I don't want to. It was mid-October, and Halloween was just around the corner. The air had started to cool, carrying that crisp autumn bite that hinted at the approaching holiday. My cousin Andy's birthday falls on October 15th, so for his 12th birthday, we gathered at Uncle John and Aunt Melissa's house for a family celebration. Our family is large, and our get-togethers are always lively, sometimes even chaotic. Since the weather was still mild, most of the party took place outside in their spacious backyard. Their house was one of those big old Victorian homes with endless hallways, creaky wooden floors, and a massive basement, perfect for playing hide and seek. Andy and I were the same age, while my older brother, Chase, was 2 years older than us. Some of our older cousins would join in, making the game more competitive. We played in teams, hiders and seekers, with one rule. If you were found, you had a chance to run outside to the backyard before being tagged. The entire house was fair game, except for our aunt and uncle's bedroom. In the basement, there was a separate room we called Aunt Melissa's fashion studio. She was a fashion designer, and the room was filled with headless mannequins, fabric rolls, and camera equipment. Some mannequins were full-bodied, dressed in her designs, while others were just torsos mounted on poles. There was even a green screen backdrop set up for her photo shoots. We had already played a few rounds when it was Chase's and my turn to hide. We both chose the basement. Chase found a spot in the main section, while I slipped into the fashion studio. I grabbed 2 blankets from an ottoman in the basement, one for me to hide under and the other to throw over a mannequin as a decoy. With the blanket draped over it, it looked just real enough to fool someone. I thought it would be hilarious when someone yanked the sheet off expecting to find me. I crawled under a large wooden desk in the corner, covered myself with the second blanket, and waited. If your hiding spot was good, most of the game was just sitting in silence, waiting. Minutes passed. Then I heard commotion in the basement. Chase was laughing and yelling, followed by the pounding of feet running up the stairs. From the sounds of it, Chase was making a break for the backyard before being tagged. And then, silence. I stayed hidden, waiting for over 10 minutes. The silence dragged on, and I started feeling bored, then uneasy. Finally, Chase came back downstairs and called my name. Game's over. Food's ready. I tossed off the blanket and hurried upstairs. The smell of catered food filled the backyard, and I quickly got in line. After eating and talking with Aunt Melissa, I suddenly remembered something. I had left both blankets in her fashion studio. Worse, one was still covering a mannequin, which she definitely wouldn't be happy about. After using the bathroom, I headed back down to the basement. The moment I opened the fashion studio door, something felt off. I flipped the light switch and froze. The blanket I had placed over the mannequin was no longer where I left it. Instead, it was draped over something else. Something sitting. At first, I assumed it was another mannequin, but none of them had been posed in a seated position before. As I stepped closer, my stomach twisted into a tight knot. It was breathing, a slow, shallow rise and fall beneath the blanket. I took a step back, my body tensing. Then, a sour, musty odor hit me, something that wasn't there before. This wasn't a joke. I swallowed hard and forced out a nervous laugh. Who is that? Silence. My chest tightened. I glanced down, hoping to see someone's shoes sticking out from under the blanket, expecting a cousin messing with me. Instead, I saw bare feet. Dark-skinned, calloused feet. A jolt of ice shot through my veins. No one at this party had dark skin. I stumbled back, my breath coming in short gasps. Then I bolted, racing upstairs and out into the backyard. I shouted for my uncle. "There's someone in the basement. Call the cops." A ripple of panic spread through the party as heads turned. My uncle, along with a few others, rushed inside. I followed, my heart hammering in my chest. When we reached the fashion studio, the blanket was no longer covering the figure. It was on the floor. The person was gone. I frantically explained what I had seen. The breathing, the bare feet, the awful smell. My uncle and a few family members searched every inch of the house, but there was no sign of anyone. Finally, Uncle John called the police. By then, the entire party was on edge. Neighbors even came outside to see what was going on. The police arrived and did a full sweep of the house. Every possible hiding place was checked. Nothing. I knew what I saw. I wasn't imagining it. Even though most of my family believed me, I wanted them to see it too, to prove I wasn't just making it up. Afterward, my uncle realized they had left the doors unlocked since family members had been coming in and out all day. It wouldn't have been hard for someone off the street to slip inside, maybe a homeless person, which could explain the smell. But something still didn't feel right. If it had been a random trespasser, why had they just sat there, silently waiting? Why hadn't they tried to steal anything? And most unsettling of all, how did they vanish without a trace? To this day, I still don't have an answer. But every time I think back to that moment, standing in the dimly lit basement, watching that blanket rise and fall with someone's breath, I get the same sinking feeling deep in my gut, because I know someone was there, and we never found out who. Hey everyone, I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way. When I was 10 years old, my family moved to a new town. That meant a new school, a new neighborhood, and being the new kid, which, as any kid knows, sucks. At my new elementary school, they made us sit with kids from our class at lunch. The problem was that all the other kids already knew each other. I was just some random outsider trying to fit in. And kids that age, they judge you hard. Making friends wasn't easy. But outside of school, things were a little different. One afternoon, while biking down the street, I met a kid named Dan. He didn't go to my school. He went to some private school instead, but he asked if I had just moved into the house on the corner. We started hanging out from there. Then, a few days later, I met Alex. It happened in a weird way. One evening, my parents called me to the front door, looking confused. When I got there, a kid was standing on our porch. "Hey," he said, "I live down the block. Do you like video games?" Of course, I said yes. "You want to come over and play Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas?" Now, San Andreas was one of those games I really wanted but didn't have. So I said sure. Alex's house was at the far end of the block, a corner house that immediately gave me a weird vibe. Unlike all the other houses, his was run down and unkempt. No grass, just two big patches of dirt with a walkway cutting through. The paint was peeling, and the front porch was covered in junk. Inside, it was worse. The place was a mess. Piles of boxes, random furniture, clothes, and trash cluttered every room. It was like a hoarder's house. The smell hit me next. a musty, sour odor that got stronger as we went downstairs. The basement smelled awful, like something had died down there. There were no lights on, just the glow of a TV. Alex had a GameCube and a 2 pounds hooked up, and we sat on an old, cracked leather couch. Despite everything, we actually had fun playing San Andreas. For a little while, I thought maybe we'd be friends. But after about 2 hours, I was ready to leave. "I gotta go," I said. Alex frowned. "Already?" I nodded, standing up. He followed me all the way to the sidewalk outside. When I finally said, "See you later," it was basically my polite way of saying, "Okay, go away now." That was my first warning sign that something was off about Alex. The next day, he showed up at my house again. He rang the doorbell and asked my parents if I could come play. This time, we played GameCube in my room for about an hour. And this was when I started noticing things. How physically close he would sit next to me. How he'd watch me instead of the screen. How he'd get strangely quiet sometimes. I started feeling uncomfortable around him. The next day, he rang the bell again. I told my mom to say I wasn't feeling good. Later that same day, I biked over to Dan's house to hang out. That was a mistake. As we rode down the block, we passed Alex's house. The second we did, his front door swung open. He stepped onto the porch, staring at me. I whispered to Dan, "I hung out with that kid, and he's kinda weird." Dan's eyes widened. "Dude, that whole family is crazy." I found out that Alex wasn't 10 like me, he was 12. That creeped me out even more. From that point on, I avoided him. A few days later, Alex came to my house again. I told my mom beforehand to say I wasn't home if he showed up. She did. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. That night, I woke up feeling cold. A breeze was blowing through my room. My window was open. I knew for a fact I had left it closed. My heart started pounding. As I sat up, something poked my foot. I screamed. At the foot of my bed stood Alex. He put a finger to his lips. "Sha, it's just me." I was frozen in shock. What are you doing in my room?" His voice was eerily calm. My parents were fighting. I didn't want to be there. "So, I climbed through your window. Can I sleep here?" I felt like I was going to throw up. "No, get out." He didn't move. "Come on. Just let me stay. Get out." Finally, he turned. Watching him silently climb back out of my window was one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen. I locked the window, ran to my parents' room, and woke them up. They were pissed. The next morning, they marched down the street to confront Alex's parents. It didn't go well. His mom laughed in their faces. She started yelling, acting like it was no big deal. My parents didn't want to get the police involved because Alex was just a kid, but I wasn't so sure. A few nights later, I woke up to soft knocking on my window. My blinds were closed, but I knew it was Alex. The knocking continued for 5 minutes. Then I heard him try to open the window. I didn't move. My heart was racing. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying he'd go away. Eventually, he did. I told my parents again, but they told me to ignore it. Days later, I was biking with Dan and another friend when we passed Alex's house. We saw him through the window, watching us. That night, for the final time, I woke up to a sound in my room. Crash. My window shattered. Glass sprayed across my room. I screamed as I saw a shadow moving behind my blinds. Alex was climbing through my broken window. I bolted out of bed and ran to my parents' room, screaming for my dad. By the time he got outside, Alex was already running. My dad chased him down the street, but Alex made it into his house before my dad could catch him. My dad pounded on their door until Alex's parents opened it. I don't know what he said, but somehow he convinced them to pay for the window. In exchange, he wouldn't call the police. After that, Alex never came near me again. I saw him a couple more times over the next few years, standing outside his house. Then, one day, his family moved away. I never found out what happened to him. But sometimes I wonder what kind of person Alex grew up to be. Because if he was breaking into kids' rooms at 12 years old, I don't even want to imagine what he's capable of now. I've been dating my girlfriend for 3 years now. I'll call her Nikki. It all started with a simple Instagram interaction. I replied to one of her stories, and from there we began talking. Eventually, I got her number, then Snapchat, and within a week, we met in person. We started spending time together right after the holidays in January, and with Valentine's Day approaching, I was glad I wouldn't have to spend it alone this year. But as the holiday neared, Nikki confided in me about something disturbing. She had a stalker. His name was Ben. He was a few years older than her and had gone to the same community college. They'd met in class for a group project, and after that, he started following her around campus. Nikki never involved the police, but the situation had escalated. He had somehow found out where she lived, sending her a series of increasingly unsettling messages. Messages she ignored. She never blocked his number, though. She wanted to see how far he would go. I asked her why she was telling me this now, and she admitted it was because Ben had started reaching out again, specifically for Valentine's Day. As you can see here, she said, showing me her phone, his messages had ramped up. At first, she kept ignoring them, but then he crossed a line. A box of Russell Stover chocolates appeared on her doorstep. She knew it was from him the moment she got his text. "I hope you like the gift I left you." That was the breaking point. She finally responded with a long message, one I won't share out of respect for her privacy. But in short, she told him he needed help and that she was seeing someone now, so he needed to leave her alone. There are a lot of ways to find someone's address these days, but the idea that he might have followed her home terrified her. I reassured her as best I could, promising that I wouldn't let anything happen to her. But then, just days later, Nikki sent me a chilling screenshot. It was from a new number, an unknown one. The message read, "Is the guy you're seeing named my name?" That made it real. Until then, I had been a bystander, but now I was involved. Nikki had mentioned that Ben was creepy, that he had followed her, that he was persistent. But now he was texting from fake numbers, asking about me by name. That was enough. Nikki was ready to call the police if this continued. I told her I'd go with her if he reached out one more time. Fast forward to Valentine's Day. It was a Friday that year. Nikki and I went to a restaurant on the waterfront, a beautiful spot with outdoor seating. The night was cool but pleasant, so we took a table outside. As we ate, something, or rather, someone, caught our attention. A man was sitting on a bench just outside the dining area, near the parking lot. He had a baseball cap pulled low over his face, almost like he was hiding. Nikki made a joke. "What if that's Ben?" We laughed. But then, as if he'd heard us, the man suddenly tilted his head in our direction, just enough to let us know he was aware of us. Then quickly, he looked away and stood up, walking off without another glance. The laughter stopped. We looked at each other, the same thought crossing both our minds. What are the chances? But we tried to shake it off. The conversation moved on, and we enjoyed the rest of our date. After dinner, we weren't ready to call it a night. Her parents were home, but I had my place to myself, so we headed back to my rental house. We were on the couch, getting closer, when Nikki suddenly pulled away. "Did you hear that?" I had. Something outside. A rustling noise, faint but distinct, from the backyard. "Want me to check?" I asked. She nodded. I slid into my sneakers and stepped onto the patio, expecting to hear an animal scurry off. Instead, I saw something that made my stomach twist. A stack of beach chairs, which had been neatly leaning against the house, had fallen over. There hadn't been a breeze all night. I turned, scanning the bushes that lined the yard. Then my eyes locked onto something out of place. A figure, tall, standing in the shadows. My breath caught in my throat. I leaned forward, trying to focus to make sense of what I was seeing. And then, as if realizing I had spotted him, the figure moved. He started stepping out of the bushes, quickly, too quickly. My body reacted before my brain did. I lunged forward, catching him just as he was freeing himself from the tangled branches. He stumbled, and I took him down, pinning him to the ground. "Who the hell are you?" I barked, though deep down I already knew. He struggled, twisting under me, but I kept my hold firm. "Nikki," I shouted. "Call the police." She came running outside, phone in hand, already talking to the dispatcher. Her eyes widened in horror as she got a good look at him. "Oh my God," she whispered. "It's him. It was Ben." And then something clicked in my head. The shirt he was wearing, it was the same color as the one worn by the man from the restaurant. The one on the bench. Minutes later, red and blue lights flashed outside my house. The police arrived and cuffed Ben, hauling him off the ground. As they questioned us, Nikki pulled up her phone, showing them the mountain of harassing messages she had received. Since he had already trespassed, Nikki pressed charges for stalking and harassment. In the end, Ben was fined and slapped with a misdemeanor. More importantly, she got a restraining order against him. If he ever contacted her again, he'd be arrested on the spot. Ben was the ultimate creep. Thank God, at least he was smart enough not to try anything after that night. Though sometimes I wonder, how long was he following us before we noticed? Was he outside that restaurant watching us eat? Or was he following us from the moment we left the house? And worst of all, what would have happened if we hadn't heard that sound? This happened 4 years ago. Valentine's Day was coming up, and my boyfriend, Ryan, and I had planned a cute dinner, just like most couples do. As we walked toward the restaurant, I noticed a couple standing outside, staring at us in a way that made my stomach tighten. Their eyes didn't waver, their expressions unreadable. I nudged Ryan slightly as we stepped inside, and he gave his name to the host to be put on the wait list. "It'll be about a 45-minute wait," she said, smiling. "I'll text you when your table is ready." Ryan suggested we kill time at the mini golf place across the street, and I agreed. But as we turned to leave, the woman from the couple suddenly stood up and raised her hand in greeting. "Hi there," she said, her voice strangely chipper. "I'm Mrs. Gretty." Something about the way she held out her hand unsettled me. I glanced at Ryan, but he didn't seem fazed. Not wanting to be rude, I shook her hand quickly. She smiled, a little too widely, and explained that she and her husband were photographers. "You two make such a striking couple," she gushed. "We'd love to do a photo shoot with you. Our studio is just 5 minutes away. No charge." Red flags exploded in my mind. She didn't offer a business card. She didn't even say a company name. Then she added, almost too casually, "We could even drive you there." Ryan declined politely. "We've got other plans," he said, his tone firm. Mrs. Gretty's smile never faltered, but something in her eyes changed. Slowly, she sat back down beside her silent husband, who had yet to utter a single word. As we got into Ryan's car, I shuddered. "That was creepy," I whispered. He nodded, starting the engine. "Yeah, let's just forget about it." We pulled into the mini golf course and were surprised to find it nearly empty. We laughed it off, but I couldn't shake the unease settling in my chest. The place was small, with a clear view of the front entrance from every level. Halfway through our game, the bell at the entrance jingled. I turned toward the sound. My heart plummeted. It was them. Mrs. Gretty scanned the room, and the moment her eyes found mine, her lips stretched into an eerie smile. I grabbed Ryan's arm. "They followed us," I whispered. He turned and stiffened as the couple casually collected their golf clubs. "I don't like this," I said. "Let's wait in the car." Ryan nodded. We turned to leave, and nearly collided with them. They were right behind us. "Crazy how we both ended up here," Mrs. Gretty cooed. Her husband spoke for the first time. "Gretty versus Rod," he murmured. My stomach flipped. Rand's last name was Rodman. There was no way they could have known that. We hurried outside, pretending not to hear them. Ryan kept his arm around me as we rushed to his car. "I just want to go home," I muttered. "After dinner," he said. "Let's not let some creepy couple ruin the night." We sat in the car for 15 minutes, talking about how bizarre the encounter was. Then Ryan's phone buzzed. The restaurant was ready for us. Dinner felt uneasy. Ryan insisted on paying, which was sweet, but I was too distracted. When he excused himself to use the restroom, I sat alone at the table. And that's when I saw her. Just for a second, peeking from around a corner, Mrs. Greddy. I blinked, and she was gone. My breath came short, but I told myself I was imagining things. Ryan returned, and we left for his house. To get there, we had to take a long, tree-lined road with no streetlights. As we drove, I noticed something in the rearview mirror. "Ryan," I said, "that car's been following us since we left." He frowned and pulled into a CVS parking lot. "Let's see if they pass us." We both went inside, pretending we needed something. When we came back out, the car was gone. Relieved, we continued the drive. But as we reached the darkest stretch of road, a sudden loud POP echoed. The car jolted. Ryan cursed and pulled over. His hands tightened on the wheel. Both front tires had blown out. His face went pale. "Get out. Now." "What? Why?" "Just do it." He grabbed my arm and pulled me into the trees. "They're coming." Heart pounding, I followed him into the dense undergrowth. He yanked out his phone and dialed 911. "We're being followed. They slashed my tires. We're hiding off Route 6 by the old pine grove." The operator told him to stay on the line. "I can't," he whispered and hung up. A low hum filled the air. Headlights. We pressed flat against the ground as a car pulled up beside Ryan's. The engine cut off. Then, a voice. "You took too long." It was her. "Mrs. Greddy." A car door slammed. Footsteps crunched against the gravel. I squeezed my eyes shut. Then, another door slammed. The car roared to life and sped away. We didn't move until we saw the flashing blue and red lights of the police. When we explained everything, they took our statements but didn't seem hopeful. "We'll follow up if anything comes up," an officer said. 4 years have passed. Nothing ever came up. No names, no arrests. We never found out who they were or what they wanted. Ryan and I are married now, and we tell this story sometimes. But every time I think about it, a chill runs down my spine. Because somewhere out there, they're still watching. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. During the fall semester of 2018, I was taking online courses through a well-regarded university, but I had already planned to transfer back to my hometown state university for the winter semester. Even though I knew I wouldn't be staying long, I still wanted to make some friends, maybe even meet someone to date. That's how I met her. I matched with this girl on Tinder. Her name was Emily, and she seemed really cool. We had a lot in common, and after a few days of talking, we decided to meet up. Long story short, we started dating, and things were fun for a while. Emily wasn't originally from my town, and after she returned from Thanksgiving break, something about her had changed. At first, I thought it was just stress from finals, but there was more to it than that. She had always been a bit sarcastic, but now it had turned into something mean, almost cruel. Her teasing, which had once been playful, became sharp and hurtful. There was no physical abuse or anything like that, but the way she spoke to me felt wrong. I chalked it up to stress and let it slide. Eventually, she went back home for winter break. We kept in touch through text, Snapchat, and FaceTime, though it became less frequent as the weeks went on. By the time I moved into my new apartment for the winter semester, a surprisingly cheap but cozy place just outside of downtown, we were already falling apart. On the first night of the new semester, we broke up. Emily admitted that she was struggling with being away from home. She didn't get along with her roommate, barely had any friends in town, and just wanted to be alone. Honestly, it was a relief. The relationship had been draining, and this gave me an easy way out. As the weeks passed, I started to feel better. In hindsight, There had been a lot of red flags I'd ignored, but it wasn't until Valentine's Day that things really took a turn. With Valentine's Day approaching, I was feeling a little down. I had originally planned a surprise date for Emily, and now I had nothing to do. Most of my friends were in relationships, so I figured I'd reactivate Tinder just to see what was out there. I got a few matches, but most of them were planning to hit the bars that night. That wasn't really my scene. Then I started chatting with a girl named Alex. She was different. Alex wasn't into the party lifestyle, preferring quiet nights and watching movies. She had shoulder-length blonde hair, cute glasses, freckles, and bright blue eyes. We hit it off instantly. As it turned out, she was even in the same major as my best friend, Rob, though she wasn't sure if they had any classes together. After about an hour of talking, I got her Snapchat, and we continued our conversation there. Eventually, I asked if she'd like to hang out on Valentine's Day. She agreed. That Thursday, we met up for a low-key date. We grabbed McDonald's, saw a movie, and walked around downtown. The night went really well. After a while, we ended up back at my apartment. One thing led to another, and we ended up sleeping together. It wasn't awkward. It felt natural, effortless. Around 1:00 a.m., we fell asleep. At some point in the night, I woke up. It was 3:00 a.m., and Alex was getting out of bed. I didn't say anything. I just assumed she was heading to the bathroom. She turned the light on, closed the door, and that was that. I drifted back to sleep. When I woke up again, it was 5:30 a.m. The other side of the bed was empty. At first, I wasn't too concerned. I figured maybe she had already left, but when I looked around, I noticed something odd. Her clothes were still on the floor, right next to mine. She was still here. That's when I heard it. A soft creak. It came from the corner of the room. I turned my head and felt my stomach drop. Alex was standing in the corner, completely still, her back facing me. A chill ran through me. I sat up slowly. Maybe she was sleepwalking. "Alex," I whispered. No response. I tried again, a little louder this time. "Hey, are you okay?" Nothing. I reached over and turned on the bedside lamp. The dim light barely illuminated the room, but it was enough to see that she hadn't moved an inch. Something about the way she was standing, the rigid posture, the unnatural stillness, sent a wave of unease through me. Cautiously, I got out of bed and walked toward her. I placed my hand gently on her shoulder. "Alex." The second I touched her, she spun around, faster than any human should be able to move. And then she started screaming. Not just any scream. It was inhuman, guttural, filled with raw rage. Her face was blank, emotionless, as she lunged at me, swaying her arms wildly. She hit me over and over, not hard enough to seriously hurt, but hard enough that I stumbled backward and fell onto the bed. She kept coming, screaming, hitting. I tried to grab her arms, but she was relentless. Then, just as suddenly as it started, she stopped. Without a word, she ran across the room, grabbed her clothes, and bolted out of the apartment, leaving the front door wide open. I scrambled out of bed and ran to the door, looking out into the hallway. She was gone. That's when I noticed it, a horrible stench coming from the bathroom. I hesitated before walking toward it. When I opened the door, the smell hit me like a punch to the gut. The shower curtain had been ripped down. My toiletries were scattered across the floor. The floor itself was soaking wet. And on the mirror, she had smeared feces across the glass. I grabbed my phone and called the police. When the officer arrived, he took my statement and asked if I had any way of identifying her. I pulled up her Tinder and Snapchat profiles, but they had both been deleted. I only had one picture of her, a Snapchat selfie I had screenshotted because I thought she looked cute, but even that had a filter over it. There wasn't much the police could do. They took my report and told me to keep my doors locked. They even suggested I have a friend stay over, just in case she tried to come back. That night, my best friend Rob crashed at my place. I told him everything. When I showed him the picture, I asked if he had ever seen Alex in class. He frowned. "No," he said. "I've never seen her before." A chill crept down my spine. Alex had said she was taking the same courses as him, in a small class that only met twice a week. How had he never seen her? That night, we stayed up watching movies. Around 3:00 a.m., just as I was starting to drift off, I heard it. The sound of someone trying to open my front door. I froze. Rob heard it too. We stayed quiet, listening as the handle jiggled. Then, after about a minute, it stopped. I walked to the peephole. Nothing. Nobody was there. Nothing's happened since that night, but I still sleep with my door triple locked. When I was a kid, my dad always told me, "Ghosts won't hurt you. It's the living you should be afraid of." I didn't really understand what he meant until much later. After my dad took his own life, I inherited a decent amount of money. At the time of his passing, he and my mom owned a cabin up in Oregon, near Mount Bachelor. Since my mom couldn't afford the mortgage anymore, she decided to sell it. The listing was set to go live in about a month, and in the meantime, it would sit empty. No more renters, no more visitors. I saw it as an opportunity, a chance to get away from everything. So I quit my job, packed up my snowboarding gear, grabbed my dog, midnight, and took my dad's old car up to the cabin. The first 2 days were peaceful. I spent my mornings playing in the snow with Midnight, my afternoons snowboarding, and my evenings drinking whiskey, smoking 'em on the balcony, and killing time with old DVDs and my PlayStation. I had stocked up on everything I needed: booze, cigarettes, food, so I had no reason to leave. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The cabin was 2 stories. Downstairs was the living room, a small kitchen, and a guest bedroom I never used. Upstairs had 2 more bedrooms, including the master, which had a walkout balcony. I mostly stayed between the living room, kitchen, and my room. The other doors stayed shut. I had no reason to go into them. But on the 3rd day, things started to feel off. It had been snowing heavily, so I decided to stay in instead of hitting the slopes. Sometime in the afternoon, while I was outside with Midnight, I noticed footprints in the snow. They were fresh, no more than 20 or 30 minutes old. At first, I figured maybe someone was staying in one of the 2 neighboring cabins, even though I hadn't seen a soul in days. But those footprints didn't lead to another house. They led into the woods, and they didn't come back out. I tried to ignore it. Maybe a hiker, I told myself. Maybe a hunter, whatever. Night came, and I headed to bed. Midnight curled up at my feet like always. Then suddenly, he perked up. His ears shot forward, alert. A second later, he bolted off the bed, sprinting downstairs. I lay still, straining to listen. My pulse pounded in my ears. I could hear Midnight moving around below, pacing back and forth. 5 minutes later, he came rushing back up, whining and doing his little dance, the one that meant he needed to go outside. I hesitated. Something about this felt wrong, but he was persistent. Fine. I grabbed a flashlight, threw on my jacket, and led him out to the driveway. But the moment we stepped outside, he didn't go to pee. Instead, he pulled against the leash hard, dragging me toward the tree line. His head was low, sniffing the air. Then he turned toward the house, toward the roof. I followed his gaze. Nothing. Still, he wouldn't move. He just sat there, staring into the woods. I tightened my grip on the leash. "Come on, bud. Let's go." It took some effort, but I finally got him back inside. Half an hour later, I was lying in bed when I heard it. Heavy footsteps. On the roof. Not scurrying, not scratching. Just slow, deliberate steps. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a pine cone fell. Maybe a raccoon. But no, these steps were spaced apart, like someone was walking. Midnight heard it too. He was already at the balcony door, ears back, body tense. I sat up. My heart pounded, but I wasn't some helpless kid. I was in good shape, strong enough to handle myself. So I grabbed my coat, a flashlight, and my cigarettes. I stepped out onto the balcony. The cold air hit me instantly, sharp and unforgiving. I flicked my lighter, took a slow drag, and lifted the flashlight to the roof. Nothing. The snow was undisturbed. No prints, no movement. Midnight stood beside me, still uneasy. I tried to relax, let my eyes adjust to the darkness. Above me, the sky stretched out, endless and star-speckled. I exhaled a cloud of smoke and lowered the flashlight. And that's when I saw it. In the tree. It was just past the cabin, perched between two thick branches. A man. At least, I thought it was a man at first. It was tall, too tall. 8, maybe 9 feet. Its limbs were wrong. Too long. Thin. Almost skeletal. It crouched in the tree, arms raised, fingers curled around a higher branch. Its skin was pale, stretched too tightly over its bones. And its mouth. Its mouth was open, wide, expressionless. My breath hitched. My body locked up. Midnight let out a low, rumbling growl. He started pacing behind me, whining under his breath. The thing in the tree didn't move. Every instinct screamed at me to shine my light on it, to get a better look, but something stopped me. Don't. The thought came unbidden. Don't look at it. Don't acknowledge it. I backed up, slowly, one step, then another. Midnight followed, his growls turning to frantic whines. I stepped inside, shut the balcony door, and locked it. Only then did I lift my flashlight and shine it at the tree. Nothing. The branches were bare, no sign of anything. I yanked the curtains closed and sat on the edge of the bed, my whole body buzzing with adrenaline. Midnight curled up beside me, his tail tucked between his legs. Then, tap, tap, tap. My breath caught in my throat. It was coming from the balcony door. Light, rhythmic, like fingertips tapping against the glass. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Midnight didn't bark this time. He just stared. And the strangest part, I felt like someone was inviting me to open it. Like something was waiting for me to let it in. But over that whispering pull, I heard another voice. One I hadn't heard in months. My father's. Stay in bed. Don't open it. I gritted my teeth, squeezed my eyes shut, and listened to him. The tapping lasted nearly an hour. Then, finally, silence. At some point, exhaustion won over fear, and I passed out. By morning, the sun had risen. The snow outside was pristine, undisturbed. I didn't waste time. I packed my things, loaded Midnight into the car, and got the hell out of there. I never went back. And the cabin? It sold 2 weeks later. I never told my mom. Never told anyone. But sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I swear I can still hear it. Tap, tap. My first big skiing trip ever was with my friends Emily, Amy, and Jessica. We all flew to Colorado and rented an Airbnb in the town of Snowpine, right near Aspen Mountain Ski Resort. I had only been snowboarding once before, and that consisted of riding down the bunny hill over and over again. I was terrible. The first thing we did after landing was Uber straight to our Airbnb, a spacious 4-bedroom cabin with a huge deck and an outdoor hot tub, overlooking the vast, snowy Colorado countryside. Since it was already nighttime when we arrived, we decided to go out and explore. We found a cozy local bar filled with skiers and snowboarders unwinding after a long day on the slopes. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that someone was watching us. The next morning, we Ubered straight to the mountain, rented our gear, and hit the slopes. Since it was a weekday, the resort wasn't too crowded, but even with fewer people, I still couldn't get the hang of snowboarding. I kept falling over and over, frustrated beyond belief. At one point, I sat down on the side of a blue run, exhausted, while kids half my age sped past effortlessly. That's when a man, clearly struggling with snowboarding just as much as I was, approached me. "You okay?" he asked, panting. I nodded, but instead of moving on, he stayed, making small talk. Something about his demeanor felt off. After a few awkward answers, I got up and said, "Nice talking to you," before heading down the mountain again. But when I stopped to take another break, I noticed him following me. He unstrapped from his snowboard and sat just a few feet away, staring. "Not used to seeing so many pretty girls like you here," he said, grinning. It was disturbing, especially because I had on a helmet and ski mask, barely any part of my face visible. "Who are you here with?" he asked. Feeling uneasy, I lied. "My boyfriend." He chuckled. "Saw you come with all girls." That was it. I gave him a disgusted look, muttered, "You," and took off down the slope. Adrenaline fueled, I snowboarded better than I ever had before, desperate to get away. At the bottom of the mountain, I rushed to the ski lodge and called Amy. She was the first to pick up, and within minutes, all of us were back together. We agreed to leave for the day, returned our gear, and Ubered back to our cabin. After hot showers and a nice dinner in town, we hit a few local bars, drinking enough to loosen up and forget the weird encounter. By the time we got back to the Airman, we were tipsy and giggling as we climbed into the hot tub on the deck. Steam rose into the cold air as we sipped our drinks, laughing about our snowboarding fails. Eventually, we headed to bed. I've always had trouble sleeping. Even buzzed, I stayed up scrolling through TikTok for over an hour. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. They weren't coming from outside. They were in the cabin. The floorboards creaked as someone moved through the living room. I assumed it was one of the girls getting water or going to the bathroom. But then, the doorknob twisted. I froze. At first, I was about to say one of their names, but then I hesitated. Why would they try to come into my room without knocking? My stomach dropped. I quickly grabbed my phone and texted the group chat. "Who's out there?" No answer. I crept to the door, pressing my ear against it. I could hear soft footsteps moving toward one of the other rooms. My heart pounded. Summoning every ounce of courage, I carefully unlocked my door, twisting the knob ever so slightly. I pushed it open just a crack and peeked into the living room. And that's when I saw him. A tall, dark silhouette. He was moving from door to door, trying each knob. My mouth went dry. I wanted to scream, to warn my friends, but I was too terrified. Instead, I carefully shut my door and locked it, my hands trembling as I reached for my phone. I dialed 911, keeping my voice barely above a whisper. "There's someone in our cabin." The operator's voice was calm but urgent. "Stay quiet. Officers are on their way." And then, knocking. My breath caught in my throat. He was at my door. The doorknob twisted again, harder this time. Then came the shoves, the bangs. Panic surged through me. I clutched the phone and whispered frantically, "Please hurry." The operator repeated, "Stay quiet. They're almost there." Suddenly, the pounding stopped. A beat of silence. Then, "Okay, sweetheart." His voice was low and mocking. I clamped a hand over my mouth, stifling a sob. Then I heard footsteps retreating. Minutes felt like hours, but soon I saw the red and blue lights flashing through the window. The front door burst open, and the police stormed in. By then, my friends were awake, shaken, and terrified. The officers searched the cabin and confirmed that the intruder was gone. They checked every entry point and found that the back door had been left unlocked, though none of us remembered ever opening it. The worst part? As we sat there, still reeling, we all had the same thought. Was it him? The man from the mountain? His voice had sounded familiar, and when I thought back to how he knew we had no boyfriends with us, my blood ran cold. In the end, we got a partial refund from the errand post, checked out the next morning, and spent the rest of the trip exploring town instead of snowboarding. That night, we stayed at a small motel, triple checking the locks before going to bed. By the time we flew home on Sunday morning, none of us could shake the feeling that we had barely escaped something much, much worse. Hey everyone, I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way. I was 9 years old when this happened. For some reason, I was home alone that night. It wasn't unusual. My mom would sometimes leave me for a short while if she had to run to the store or pick up something from a friend. She always told me not to answer the door for anyone. I was upstairs in my room, playing Metroid Prime on my GameCube. I was obsessed with that game back then. The house was quiet except for the hum of the TV and the clicking of my controller. Then suddenly, the house phone started ringing downstairs. My mom always told me to pick up if she called, so I rushed down, grabbing the phone just as it rang for the fourth time. The caller ID showed my mom's cell phone. "Sweetie," her voice came through the receiver, "can you come outside and help me with the groceries?" I blinked. Something was off. "Mom?" I asked cautiously. "Yes," she replied, but her voice was wrong. You know your own mother's voice. Even at that age, I could tell that something wasn't right. "Why do you sound like that?" I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. "Like what, sweetie?" she said again. My stomach dropped. My mom never called me sweetie like that, and she said it twice, in a way that felt almost forced. Without another word, I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. My mom's number flashed on the caller ID once more, but this time I ignored it. My heart was pounding in my chest. I stood frozen in the kitchen, gripping the counter. Why did her voice sound wrong? A couple of minutes passed. Then the phone rang again, but this time it was from a different number. I hesitated, then picked up. A man's voice came through the line. Deep, calm, too calm. "Hey, James. I know this is going to sound weird, but it's your dad. I'm outside." A shiver ran down my spine. My dad died when I was 3. I had no memory of him. I could barely whisper, "What?" The man's voice didn't change. "I'm outside. I have a lot to explain." I slammed the phone down. That was it. That was all the proof I needed. The first call wasn't my mom. And this wasn't my dad. Then the real horror began. The doorbell rang. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Then knocks at the front door. Loud. Insistent. This had just gone from someone has my mom's phone to someone is outside my house. I slowly peeked around the kitchen wall, my breath caught in my throat. Through the frosted glass on the front door, I could see a shadowy figure standing there. Then, a muffled voice. "James, it's me, your dad." I clamped a hand over my mouth. The doorknob rattled. He was trying to get in. I did something no 9-year-old should ever have to do. I grabbed the phone and dialed 911. The operator picked up immediately. I whispered, voice shaking, telling them that someone was trying to get into my house. They told me to go into a room with a lock and stay put until police arrived. The bathroom was the closest option. I ran inside, locked the door, and turned off the lights. And then, scraping. From the window. Someone was trying to pull it open. I pressed myself into the corner of the bathroom, trying not to breathe too loud. The scraping turned into a full-on rattling. They were trying to get in. Then, silence. And then, another window. I heard it being tested. Then another. Then another. They were trying every single window and door. I squeezed my eyes shut. If anything had been unlocked. A long, horrible minute passed. Then another. Then, sirens. I heard the sound of a car pulling up, doors slamming, voices shouting. The 911 operator told me, "The police are at your front door, James. It's safe to go out now." Only then did I move. Only then did I finally let myself breathe. I opened the door to see 2 officers standing in my house, flashlights sweeping the rooms. I hung up the phone as they started asking me questions, where my mom was, if she knew anyone who would try to hurt us. I told them she was just at the store and that I didn't think so. When my mom finally pulled up in the driveway with my little sister, she saw the police cars and ran inside in a panic. That's when she realized her phone was missing. She hadn't lost it. It was stolen. Whoever took it must have found our address, our phone number, and somehow my name. Her old flip phone had a background photo of us, her, me, and my sister. Some sick, twisted couple must have figured out that she was a single mom with 2 young kids, and they used that information to try and trick me into leaving the house. But they failed. The phone was never found. Neither were they. After that, my mom never left me alone at night again, not until I was much, much older. And I never forgot the voice that called me sweetie, or the man who claimed to be my father. When my cousin Cody and I were in our early 20s, we took a handful of camping trips across Colorado. This happened when I was 22 and he was 23 during a midweek trip to Red Hollow Forest, a dense, isolated woodland known for its towering pines and winding trails. It was my first time camping there, though Cody had been before. We planned midweek trips whenever we could. Our jobs gave us flexible time off, and we preferred the solitude. No crowds, no noisy tourists. Cody was the expert outdoorsman, an Eagle Scout with years of experience. I, on the other hand, just followed his lead. We parked near a picnic area, gathered our gear, and hiked about 15 minutes into the woods before settling on a decent clearing, a flat, open space big enough for 2 tents, a portable stove, and a fire pit. As usual, Cody pitched his tent in minutes while I struggled for over 20. In hindsight, that was the last time I ever camped in the wilderness. Once the tents were up, we built a stone fire ring and gathered wood. Cody cheated a little. He brought fire starter and a lighter, but neither of us cared. The sun was already dipping below the tree line, and by the time we had a decent fire going, Cody was prepping steak and burgers over the flames. If there was one thing about Cody, it was that he never skimped on food. No canned beans or trail mix. He always packed real meals. As the meat sizzled, the smell filled the crisp evening air. We cracked open some beers, put on classic rock, and sat back. If you've never been camping, you don't understand how perfect those moments are. Just you, the wilderness, and good company. A fire crackling, a full stomach, music echoing through the trees. It was peaceful. At least it was, until we heard the humming. I was mid-sip when the noise reached us, a soft, melodic tune drifting through the dark. Then, footsteps, slow, measured, coming from the trees. I muted the speaker. The forest fell into silence, save for the distant crunching of twigs underfoot. I grabbed the flashlight, but by the time I turned it on, the sounds had stopped. "What the hell was that?" I whispered. Cody was staring into the blackness. His face was tight. "No clue," he said, "but that's not normal." We sat there for a long moment, ears straining. The fire popped and flickered, but beyond that, there was only silence. I asked Cody if we should be worried. "Definitely weird," he admitted, "but probably just some hiker passing through." Even so, the mood had shifted. We turned the music way down and focused on our card game, trying to shake the unease. Then something hit the ground, hard. A branch, thick and jagged, landed right in the middle of our campsite. We jumped up. My heart was pounding. That hadn't fallen from a tree. Someone had thrown it. Cody shot to his feet. "Hey, whoever's out there, get a life and **** off." His voice echoed into the trees. For a moment, nothing. Then, footsteps again, but this time they were retreating. I exhaled, trying to slow my heartbeat. "Dude, we should go." Cody shook his head. "Not in the dark. That's way more dangerous." He handed me a can of bear spray and told me to keep it close. If someone comes near your tent, you spray them in the face. It wasn't comforting. At all. That night, the forest felt different. Every crack of a branch, every gust of wind, sent my nerves spiking. Cody suggested we take turns keeping watch, and I agreed. Better safe than sorry. He volunteered to go first, settling by the fire with his book while I crawled into my tent and zipped it up. I slid into my sleeping bag, keeping the bear spray within reach. I wasn't sure how long I'd been asleep when something woke me. A presence. I blinked, my vision adjusting to the darkness. A head was peeking into my tent. My brain was sluggish. The face was shadowed, features hidden. My first thought was Cody. Cody? I mumbled, my voice thick with sleep. Is it my turn? The figure didn't move. A second passed, then another. Then, suddenly, ZIP. The tent snapped shut. The figure was gone. I laid back down. My pulse was slowing. It had to be Cody, right? He must have been waking me up for my turn. But something felt off. I shot upright, now fully awake. I listened. Footsteps. Walking away. Cody? I called out. No answer. Dread flooded my stomach. I unzipped my tent, my hands shaking. The fire was out. The camp was still. Cody wasn't there. Heart hammering, I rushed to his tent and unzipped it. He was still asleep inside. I froze. My skin crawled. It wasn't Cody. I grabbed his shoulder, shaking him violently. Dude, wake up. He groaned, still half asleep. What? Someone was just looking into my tent. Cody sat up fast, instantly awake. He reached for his bear spray. Are you sure? Yes, I hissed. 100%. He swore under his breath. I must have dozed off. I wanted out. I wanted to pack up and run, but moving through the forest at night wasn't an option. Sleep in here, Cody said. We'll figure it out in the morning. I nodded, but first, I needed my sleeping bag. I rushed back to my tent, grabbed the bag, and froze. The humming was back. Soft, distant, moving closer. I spun around, my pulse jackhammering. Cody, do you hear that? Yeah, he whispered. Hurry. I ran back. We dove into his tent and zipped it up tight. The humming continued. We sat in absolute silence, bear spray gripped in our hands. At that moment, I wanted a bear to show up. Anything would be better than this. The night crawled by. When my turn to watch came, I sat awake, every sound sending jolts of fear through me. I counted the minutes, the hours. Eventually, dawn crept in, soft light filtering through the trees. Cody woke up. We packed in record time. Neither of us spoke. By the time we made it back to the car, the sun was up. We could have stayed somewhere else, tried another campsite. But we didn't. We just wanted to go home. It's been 6 years. Cody still asks me to go camping. I always say no. I don't think I ever will again. Not after that night. Because people, not bears, not wolves, not the dark, are the scariest thing in the woods. And whoever was out there that night, they were watching us. When I was 19, I thought I was fearless. Horror movies, ghost stories, haunted houses, none of it fazed me. In fact, I loved the thrill. It made me feel invincible, like I had some kind of superpower. Fear was for other people, not me. It even worked in my favor when it came to dating. Girls were always impressed by how tough I was. My best friend, Megan, had a different experience with fear. She suffered from sleep paralysis, something she described to me in horrifying detail. According to her, it was like being trapped in a living nightmare, unable to move, unable to scream, completely at the mercy of the hallucinations that came with it. Sometimes it was harmless, random colors, strange sounds. Other times it was the stuff of nightmares, dark figures looming over her, whispers in her ears, hands gripping her body. But I never really took it seriously. One night Megan texted me frantic. She just had another terrifying episode and didn't want to be alone. So being the good friend I was, I grabbed my jacket and drove over to her place. When I arrived, I found her asleep, or at least I thought she was. She looked peaceful, breathing steadily, curled up beneath her blankets. I figured maybe she'd calmed down after calling me and had dozed off. Not wanting to wake her, I sat down on the small stool by her vanity mirror, pulled out my phone, and started playing a game to pass the time. After about 30 minutes, I figured she was fine and decided to head home. I stood up, about to text her that I had stopped by, when suddenly, she screamed. Not a normal scream. It was muffled, choked, like someone screaming through clenched teeth. Her eyes snapped open, wide with terror, and she began thrashing violently. I ran to her, grabbing her shoulders. "Megan? Hey, what's wrong?" She didn't answer. Her whole body shook as if she were having a seizure. I held on to her, trying to calm her down, but the trembling only intensified. It lasted about 30 seconds, then stopped just as abruptly. She stared at me, her chest rising and falling rapidly, before she finally exhaled and relaxed. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded weakly. I stayed for a few more minutes, making sure she was fine, but she insisted I could leave. It was already past 1 in the morning, and I was exhausted, so I headed home. Then came the text. "The hallucinations won't stop." I immediately replied, "What do you mean?" No answer. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. 20. Nothing. A deep sense of unease crept over me. Something felt wrong. Finally, unable to shake the feeling, I grabbed my keys and drove back to her house. When I turned onto her street, my stomach dropped. Red and blue lights flashed against the dark sky. Police cars lined the driveway. Officers were walking in and out of the house. My heartbeat hammered in my ears as I threw the car into park and ran toward the front porch. "Megan?" I shouted. I found her standing outside, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale as death. An officer stood beside her, talking in low tones. When she saw me, she gestured for me to come over. What she told me still haunts me to this day. That night, when I arrived at her house, she hadn't been asleep at all. She'd been pretending, because right before I got there, she had seen something move in the darkness of her room. Not a shadow, not a hallucination. A man. A tall, gaunt, disheveled-looking stranger was hiding in her closet, watching her. The moment she spotted him, he pressed a finger to his lips and shook his head. A silent warning not to scream. Paralyzed with fear, Megan played dead, shutting her eyes and forcing her breathing to slow, hoping, praying, he would think she was asleep. She had no way to reach for her phone, no way to run. Then I showed up. And that was the only reason she was still alive. The man had been about to move closer when my footsteps echoed down the hall. My arrival spooked him, forcing him to stay hidden. That gave Megan the chance to grab her phone under the covers and text 911, disguising it as a message to me. The police had arrived minutes after I left, just in time to catch him sneaking out of her closet, clutching a large kitchen knife. They arrested him immediately. Even now, I try not to think about what would have happened if I hadn't gone over, if I'd ignored her text, if I had stayed just 5 minutes longer. Maybe I wasn't as fearless as I thought, because to this day, I have never been more terrified in my life. When I was 8 years old, I remember hearing something that terrified me. Our family friends were planning to knock down their old garage and build a cottage for my mom, my sister, and me to move into. Before the construction began, their kids, who were my age, told me a chilling story. They claimed that beneath the planks of wood in the garage lay the body of a murdered woman. At the time, I was too young to fully process what they said, but it left me feeling uneasy. Eventually, I forgot about it, or so I thought. Apologies for the interruption. If you're enjoying the video, please let me know in the comments from where you are watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. A year later, we moved into the cottage. My sister and I shared a bedroom, while my mom had her room down the hall. On our very first night there, I couldn't sleep. I felt like I was being watched. I turned over in bed and looked out into the hallway. And that's when I saw it. A dark, shadowy figure that looked like a woman. She was just standing there, motionless. My heart raced, and I quickly pulled the blankets over my head. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next day, I tried to shake it off. A friend, the youngest son of our family friends, suggested we explore under the house. At first, it was just an adventure, until we stumbled upon something I recognized immediately. There, under the house, were planks of wood just like the ones I'd been told about years earlier. The memory of their story about the murdered woman came rushing back. I froze for a moment before panic set in. I bolted out from under the house, stumbling over my feet in my rush to get away. I ran straight to my mom's room, too scared to explain what I'd seen. From that night on, things didn't get better. Every single night, I'd see that same shadowy figure in the hallway, always watching me. For years, it became a constant presence. But as time passed, the activity in the house started to escalate. By the time I was 11, things got even stranger. One night, when my mom and sister were next door, I stayed home alone to watch TV. A storm rolled in, and as I sat there, I heard footsteps coming up the stairs toward the front door. Our front door was a glass slider, so I waited for whoever it was to appear. Then a flash of lightning lit up the door, and there was no one there. I panicked and ran next door, my fear overwhelming any sense of logic. After that night, more and more unexplainable things began to happen. Objects in the house would move on their own, and our appliances started to malfunction randomly during the night. I started to hate living there, and I longed to leave the cottage behind. When I turned 14, my mom decided it was time to move. She had been with her long-term boyfriend for a while, and they found a new house for us. I was thrilled to be leaving, but as moving day drew closer, the activity in the house became even scarier. One day, after a sleepover with friends, I came home to find my room completely trashed. Everything was thrown everywhere, and it looked as though someone had gone through it in a rage. I immediately confronted my little sister, thinking she had done it, but she hadn't been home all day. Nobody had. That night, things moved on their own, and the appliances went haywire again. It was as though the house was angry we were leaving. The day we moved out was one of the happiest of my life. In the new house, I have my own room. It's downstairs, which can feel a little scary sometimes, especially when the house creaks at night. Old habits die hard, and I still dive under the blankets when I hear something that spooks me. So far, though, I haven't experienced anything paranormal here. But hey, I'm only 14. There's still time, right? Some people might not believe what I've experienced, and that's okay. But I know what I saw and felt in that cottage. Those years made me a firm believer in the supernatural, and I'll never forget the presence that haunted that house. About 4 years ago, I had an experience that still gives me chills whenever I think about it. I believe it all started during a trip to a country where demon worship is practiced, where people pray and offer sacrifices to keep spirits from troubling them. I was curious and fascinated by the culture, so I visited many ancient sites, some of which were surrounded by temples and worshiping hotels. I approached several of them, intrigued by what I saw. But as I got closer, I started to feel strange. My ears felt blocked, like I was underwater, and I couldn't hear properly. When I returned home, things only got worse. I didn't feel like myself. My mind was filled with strange, intrusive thoughts, dark and unsettling thoughts that were completely unlike me. I also started seeing shadows out of the corner of my eye. It was subtle at first, but it grew more frequent, and soon I found myself talking to these shadows without even realizing it. One night, my daughter woke up crying around 1:00 a.m. She told me she had a nightmare in which I was being sucked up by a black tornado. Her words shook me, but I tried to brush them off as just a dream. Later that night, I was still awake, scrolling through articles and videos about ghosts and spirits, trying to make sense of everything I'd been experiencing. Eventually, I went to bed. At exactly 3:00 a.m., I woke up from a nightmare. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might burst out of my chest. I had never felt my heart race like that before. Just as I was trying to calm myself, the TV in our bedroom turned on by itself. I froze. My husband woke up, and we both stared at the TV in disbelief. We couldn't explain it. After a while, we turned it off and went back to sleep, unsettled but unsure of what else to do. The next night, it happened again. Another nightmare, waking up at precisely 3:00 a.m., heart racing. This time, when the TV turned on, it was showing images of temples that looked eerily similar to the ones I had visited during my trip. I remembered tuning the TV to a spiritual channel earlier that day, but the coincidence was too much. My husband prayed in front of the TV before we went back to bed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me home. On the third night, the cycle repeated itself. Another nightmare, waking up at exactly 3:00 a.m., heart pounding. The TV turned on again, and I finally snapped. I wasn't scared anymore. I was furious. I woke my husband and told him, "That's enough. I brought this here, so I'm the one who's going to make it leave." I don't know where the sudden courage came from, but I felt a strength I'd never known before. My whole body was trembling, but I stood firm. I started praying loudly, declaring that my family belonged to God and demanding that whatever was in my home leave immediately. I told it I wasn't afraid anymore. As I prayed, the TV began turning on and off repeatedly, as if it were reacting to my words. But I didn't stop. I kept praying until the TV finally turned off for good. That was the last time I experienced anything paranormal. Whatever it was, it left that night. I've never felt so strong in my entire life. It was like a lioness protecting her territory, challenging an intruder and refusing to back down. In the days that followed, I couldn't stop thinking about why everything had happened at 3:00 a.m. That weekend, I spoke to my pastor, who explained the significance of the witching hour, a time believed to be associated with evil forces. I was shocked to learn how common this phenomenon is, though it manifests differently for everyone. Looking back, I'm grateful for the strength I found that night, and I've never had a problem since. Still, I can't help but wonder how close I came to letting something far darker take hold. This experience has made me a firm believer in the power of faith and the importance of standing up to fear. Tonight's story is a deeply personal one, an experience that still gives me chills to this day. It's about a terrifying series of nights I faced after a trip abroad, something I brought back with me that I never should have encountered in the first place. It happened about 4 years ago during a trip to a country with rich ancient traditions, where people offered prayers and gifts to spirits and demons, not to invite them in, but to keep their troubles at bay. Out of curiosity, I visited several sites connected to this practice, including temples and ancient landmarks. At the time, I didn't realize just how much that curiosity would cost me. As I wandered through those sacred spaces, I noticed something strange. My ears would suddenly feel blocked, almost like I was underwater, and I couldn't hear properly. It was disorienting, but I brushed it off. After all, I was just a tourist exploring a new culture, right? But then, something inside me started to shift. My thoughts turned dark and unfamiliar, nothing like my usual self. It felt like something had taken root within me. When I returned home, the unease didn't go away. In fact, it only grew worse. I began seeing shadows in the corners of my eyes, just faint movements, but enough to unsettle me. At first, I thought I was imagining things, but then I caught myself talking to the shadows as if they were real. It was like I was losing control. One night, my daughter woke up crying around 1:00 a.m. She came to me, visibly shaken, and said she had a nightmare. In her dream, she saw me being sucked up into a swirling black tornado. Her words sent a shiver down my spine. I reassured her as best I could and sent her back to bed, but the unease lingered. Later that night, while researching spirits and hauntings online, I finally went to sleep. At exactly 3:00 a.m., I woke up gasping from a nightmare. My heart was pounding so loudly I thought it might burst out of my chest. It was the most intense fear I'd ever felt. As I sat there trying to calm myself down, the TV suddenly turned on by itself. My stomach dropped. I woke my husband, and we both stared at the screen in disbelief. Unable to find an explanation, we eventually went back to bed, though sleep didn't come easily. The following night, the exact same thing happened. I woke up from another nightmare, checked the clock, and saw those glowing red numbers. 3:00 a.m. My heart was racing again, and then, just like the night before, the TV turned on by itself. But this time, the screen showed images of worship temples, eerily similar to the ones I had visited during my trip. I couldn't believe it. My husband prayed in front of the TV, hoping it would help, and then we went back to bed. By the third night, I had had enough. Another nightmare. Another 3:00 a.m. awakening. Another heart-pounding terror. But this time, something changed. Instead of fear, I felt anger. A fierce determination I hadn't felt before. I woke my husband and told him, "That's enough. I brought this here, so I'm the one who has to make it leave." I don't know where the strength came from, but I started praying loudly, declaring that my family belonged to God and that whatever this thing was, it had no place in our lives. My whole body trembled, but I stood firm. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was a lioness defending her territory, and I was ready to fight. As I prayed, the TV flickered on and off, the images flashing wildly. Then finally, it turned off for good. The room fell silent, and I knew it was gone. Whatever had been tormenting me had been driven out. I never experienced anything like that again. Later, I spoke with my pastor, who explained the significance of 3:00 a.m., often called the witching hour. It's believed to be a time when spiritual activity is at its peak, a mockery of sacred hours. Knowing this brought me some relief, realizing I wasn't the only one who had experienced something like this. But even now, I look back and shiver at the memory of those nights. What do you think? Could it have been something I brought back with me, or was it all just a coincidence? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Tonight, I want to share a deeply unsettling experience that still haunts me. It's not just what happened to me, but how it seemed to affect others around me. Even now, I can't fully explain it. It all started one quiet night. I was lying in bed, listening to music, trying to relax, when for some reason I woke up suddenly. Glancing over at the clock, I saw it was 3:00 a.m. At first, I didn't think much of it, but then I heard something that made my blood run cold. A deep voice, coming from nowhere, said, "Don't disturb the dreams of others, or I will come for you." My heart raced as I froze in fear. I didn't dare move. I told myself to stay silent, to do nothing that might make things worse. That's when the voice returned, louder this time, accusing me with chilling finality. "You did it?" Terrified, I turned toward the bedroom door, and that's when I saw her. There was a girl standing there, her figure barely visible in the dim light, moving toward me in an unnervingly slow manner. I wanted to scream, to get up and run, but I couldn't. My whole body was frozen in place. My arms were crossed over my chest, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't uncross them or move at all. It felt as though I was trapped, unable to do anything but watch as she came closer. Then, just as suddenly as she appeared, she vanished. But the relief was short-lived, as moments later, she reappeared. Each time, I remained paralyzed, unable to act. I know this wasn't a dream. It felt too real, too vivid, and the fear stayed with me long after the night ended. 3 weeks later, something happened that confirmed it wasn't just in my head. My family and I went to my sister and her husband's apartment for his birthday. We had planned the celebration for a Friday night since his actual birthday was earlier in the week and everyone had work. That night, after the festivities, I decided to lie down in their empty room and listen to music. I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I knew, my parents were waking me up around 11:30 p.m. to head home. I didn't think much of it at the time and moved on with my week. The following Monday, I saw my sister and her husband again. Without me mentioning anything about what had happened to me, they told me something that sent chills down my spine. They explained that strange things had been happening in their apartment all week. My brother-in-law described waking up one night unable to move, feeling a heavy pressure on his chest that left him paralyzed. He said his arms were crossed, just like mine had been, and then he saw her. the same girl. What shook me even more was when my sister chimed in, saying she had seen the girl too, though at a different time. Their accounts matched mine so closely that I knew it wasn't a coincidence. This was real, and somehow it had followed me to their home. A few days later, my family and I traveled to El Paso, Texas, where most of my extended family lives. We stayed at my cousin's house, and I slept in his room that night, again listening to music as I tried to relax. That night, nothing happened to me directly, but when we returned from a brief trip to Mexico 2 days later, my cousin told me something that made my stomach turn. He said he had started seeing things in his house, shadows, strange movements, and of course, the girl. He described her exactly as I had seen her. By this point, I couldn't deny it any longer. This wasn't just something I imagined. It wasn't limited to me. Wherever I went, this presence seemed to follow, and it wasn't just affecting me anymore. Even now, I can't fully explain what happened or why. Was it something I did? Something I unknowingly brought with me? I don't know. All I know is that it was terrifying, and it's something I'll never forget. What do you think? Have you ever experienced something like this, something you couldn't explain? Let me know in the comments below. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Tonight, I want to share a personal account that still makes me question what might be lurking in the unseen corners of our world. This story is about my home, an apartment where I've lived for the past 5 years. At first, everything seemed perfectly normal, but over time, things started to change. Lately, it feels like the strange occurrences have escalated, as though something or someone wants my attention. It started subtly, with little things that were easy to dismiss. My daughter and I often sit on my bed to watch TV, and several times we felt knocks against the bed. It was as if something was under it, lightly bumping against the frame. At first, I thought it might be the cat, but each time it happened, I'd look over and see the cat fast asleep. I've also heard footsteps in the apartment when no one else was home. They always seem to stop just before I can catch sight of who or what it might be. About a year ago, something happened that I can still feel if I let myself think about it too much. I was asleep, and in the middle of the night, I felt arms wrap around my waist. The sensation was startlingly real, warm, almost comforting, but deeply unsettling. It didn't feel malevolent, but the strangeness of it left me lying awake for hours, questioning what I had just experienced. Over the past year, these occurrences have become more frequent, and they seem to be affecting my surroundings in unexpected ways. My bedroom fan, which usually works fine, sometimes drags or makes strange noises, refusing to speed up. Then there's the stove. Just 2 weeks ago, it started ticking as if the timer was stuck. At first, it was subtle, but within a few days, the ticking grew louder and faster, to the point where it was impossible to ignore. We couldn't find a cause for it, but just as suddenly as it started, it stopped, returning to normal as if nothing had happened. Then there are the nights, those unsettling nights. The other night I was asleep and felt someone grab my legs between my feet and knees and shake them, as if trying to wake me up. I was terrified. I could feel myself trying to cry out, but the sound was more of a whimper, and I couldn't wake up fully. It was like I was stuck in a state between sleep and wakefulness, fully aware of what was happening, but unable to move or react. When I finally woke up, I could move freely, but the fear lingered, making it impossible to go back to sleep. Another night, while sitting at my computer around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps in the living room. They were distinct, steady, and growing louder as if someone was approaching. My heart raced as I imagined someone turning the corner into the room where I was sitting. I stood up, panicked, trying to figure out what I could do to protect myself. But just before the footsteps reached the corner, they stopped. When I mustered the courage to check, the room was empty. Last night was even worse. I had just gone to bed, still shaken by everything that's been happening. I drifted off to sleep, but it wasn't long before I felt someone grabbing my hair, pulling it hard and fast, yanking at different sections. I tried to call out for my daughter, who was sleeping next to me, but it was more of a whisper, as if I was too afraid to raise my voice. I remember scooting closer to her, seeking comfort, and either falling back to sleep or never truly waking. The lines between dreams and reality felt blurred, but the fear was all too real. And then there was last night. I woke up in the middle of the night feeling a strange presence all around me. In my dream, or at least I think it was a dream, I screamed for it to leave me alone. Something urged me to tell it to go toward the light, and I did, though I was still terrified. When I woke up, I was so unnerved that I turned on the light and the TV, hoping the brightness would keep whatever it was at bay. A few minutes later, I heard the wastebasket in the bathroom move across the floor. The sound was distinct, glass scraping against ceramic tile. I couldn't ignore it, so I went to check. Sure enough, the wastebasket had moved. I put it back in its original spot and returned to bed, but the sound stayed with me, echoing in my mind. Was it angry? Was it trying to get my attention? I don't know, but I haven't been able to shake the feeling that something, or someone, is here with me. What do you think? Could it be a restless spirit, or am I imagining things? I'm not sure what to believe anymore, but I know this much. I feel like I'm not alone in this apartment. If you've ever experienced something like this, let me know in the comments. Tonight's story is one that comes straight from the home I've been living in for nearly 2 decades. It's not something I talk about often, but I felt like sharing it might help me process everything that's happened, or at least give you something to think about. In August of 2004, my wife and I, along with our 4 kids, moved into a home in Marysville, California. It was a good deal at the time, a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house with an add-on for less than $300,000. The house was built in 1976, one of many homes in the area surrounding Beale Air Force Base. We were excited to settle in and start a new chapter, but within 2 weeks, strange things began happening. The first incident was downright unsettling. We came home one day to find all the chairs from our kitchen table stacked neatly on top of it. There was no one else in the house who could have done it. Over the following months, we started noticing other odd occurrences. Lights would turn on and off by themselves, and doors would open or shut for no apparent reason. At first, we chalked it up to faulty wiring or drafts, but it kept happening, and there was no logical explanation. One event that still stands out in my memory was when my wife was cleaning in the bedroom. The TV turned on by itself, then off, then on again. I witnessed the same thing on another occasion. Then there's our dog, who has barked furiously at seemingly nothing, retreating to a corner and refusing to move. Once we found both sides of our kitchen sink filled with water, scalding hot to the touch. No one in the family had left the water running, and we couldn't figure out how it happened. One morning, I woke up early and went to the bathroom. I was half asleep, staring at the floor tiles near my feet, when I saw something that made my blood run cold. Standing in the shower doorway was a woman. I froze for a moment before bolting back to the bedroom to wake my wife. When we returned to check, there was nothing there. We've seen shadows and flashes of movement out of the corners of our eyes, but this was different. It felt real, as if someone was actually there. The strange activity isn't limited to just visual phenomena. Once I went into the kitchen to start dinner and found everything in the cupboards flipped upside down. Another time, we left fruit and bread out overnight, only to find it spoiled and moldy the next morning, far faster than it should have. Plants don't seem to survive long in our home either, no matter how well we care for them. There's also the sound, tapping, rhythmic and repetitive, coming through our stereo or computer speakers. It's always the same pattern, and we've never been able to trace its source. My oldest son, who's 16, has seen a misty haze in the upper corner of his room, and my 14-year-old daughter has had her own experiences, hearing strange noises and seeing things she can't explain. We've tried to shield the younger kids from all of this, hoping that out of sight, out of mind will help them avoid the fear we felt. For the most part, we try not to dwell on these occurrences. It seems like the less attention we give them, the less frequent they become. Still, Every now and then, something will happen, a light flickering, an odd noise, or the feeling of something brushing past that reminds us we're not entirely alone in this house. The last big incident was a few months ago when I felt something sit on the bed beside me. The weight of it pressed down the mattress, and I froze in fear, unable to move. Since then, things have calmed down, but I'm hesitant to say it's over. Knock on wood. It's hard to explain all of this, and I don't know if I ever will. But it's our reality, one we've learned to live with over the years. What do you think? Have you ever experienced something like this in your own home? I'd love to hear your thoughts or stories in the comments below. I'm sharing an experience that happened to me recently, and it's something I still can't fully explain. It wasn't the first time I've felt something unexplainable while lying in my bed, but this particular night left me shaken and questioning what might have been in the room with me. It was around 2:00 a.m. on March 22nd. I had just turned off the lights and settled into bed, trying to get comfortable. One arm was above my head, resting on the pillow, and the other was by my side. Both of my palms were facing upwards as I started to drift off, but within minutes, I felt a strange sensation, a light tickling, almost like an itch. It wasn't unusual at first, just one of those random feelings you get before falling asleep. I decided to move my arm that was above my head to scratch it, but I couldn't. My arm wouldn't move. Confused, I thought maybe it was just a weird case of my arm falling asleep, so I tried using my other hand instead, but that one wouldn't move either. That's when the pressure started. Both of my arms felt pinned down, like something heavy was holding them in place. Panic set in. My eyes widened as I realized I couldn't move. My arms started to hurt from the weight pressing down on them, and I had no idea what was happening. I wanted to scream, to call out for help, but I couldn't bring myself to make a sound. Part of me was scared of waking up my family, but mostly I was too terrified to speak. My whole body started to tingle, like a current of static electricity was running through me. And then, something even stranger happened. My hands started moving. I wasn't controlling them, but they opened and closed as if being pushed by an unseen force. I could feel the movements, deliberate and steady, yet completely out of my control. Apologies for the interruption. If you're enjoying the video, please let me know in the comments from where you are watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. This went on for about 15 minutes, though it felt much longer in the moment. Eventually, the pressure on my arms started to ease, and I was able to move again. I rolled onto my side, thinking maybe I could finally get some rest. But just as I started to relax, I felt it again. This time, it was as though someone was lying behind me, wrapping their arms around my body. I froze. Once again, I couldn't move, and the tingling sensation returned. It only lasted about 2 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. When the sensation finally faded, I was left lying there, shaken and wide awake. Strangely enough, as I started to type all of this out later, my nose began to bleed. I don't know if that was connected or just a coincidence, but it felt eerie, given what had just happened. This wasn't the first time I've had an experience like this. About a year ago, around the same time of night, I was lying in bed when it felt like someone, or something, jumped onto the foot of my bed. The mattress dipped, and the sound was unmistakable, as if something heavy had landed right there. I reached over to turn on my light, expecting to see, I don't know what, but there was nothing, just an empty room, quiet except for my racing heartbeat. These are my experiences, and I swear they are completely true. I don't know what to make of them, but they've stayed with me, making me question what might be out there, or what might be closer than I realize. What do you think? My story begins several years ago, 10 years and 10 months, to be exact. At the time, I was pregnant with my second child, a son, when my papa passed away after a long and painful battle with cancer. He adored my daughter and was heartbroken knowing he likely wouldn't get to meet his great-grandson. During his final years, he moved in with my mother and spent his last days in what used to be my brother's room at her home. That's where he passed away. Last July, my mother retired and decided to move. My fiancé and I bought the house, my childhood home, and began the process of remodeling it completely. One day, I was alone in the house, painting what used to be my brother's old room. It was going to be a shared bedroom for my two sons, my 10-year-old and my toddler. I was up on a ladder, trying to stretch and paint the higher corners of the walls. Not the smartest move, and suddenly, I lost my balance. I felt my feet leave the ladder, and for a split second, I thought I was about to hit the floor. I closed my eyes, bracing for the fall, but instead, I felt something steady me. It was as if I'd been gently placed back on the ladder. Goosebumps ran down my arms as I whispered, "Thanks, Papa." For months after that, everything seemed normal. That is, until 2 nights ago. My toddler, usually fearless and unfazed by the dark, told me there was a ghost lying in his Bubba's bed. Since then, he's become noticeably clingy. It's out of character for him, as he's always been independent and confident. Last night, as my fiancé and I were watching TV, my toddler sat in his bed, playing on his Game Boy. He mentioned the ghost again, and this time we decided to observe him closely without letting him know we were watching. As he played, we saw him glance over at the bed beside him with wide, cautious eyes. He wasn't crying or panicking, but it was clear he didn't want to lose sight of whatever, or whoever, he believed was there. He kept sneaking glances every few minutes, watching intently as if he was aware of something we couldn't see. He did this for about 20 minutes before returning his attention to his game. My 2 older children weren't home that evening, so it was just the 3 of us in the house. I can't help but wonder what he's seeing or sensing. Is it just his imagination, or is it something more? I haven't felt anything malevolent in the house. If anything, I've only felt comforted by the possibility that my papa might still be watching over us. But I also can't ignore how uneasy my son has become in the room. Does anyone have any advice or insight? I'm open to suggestions because I just want my little boy to feel at ease in his home again. Something, whether it's a spirit, ghost, or something else entirely, has been following me, my mother, and my brother for as long as I can remember. No matter where we move, it finds us. Right now, I'm in Australia. My mother is in New Zealand, and my brother lives somewhere else entirely. But that doesn't seem to matter. It always comes back. The first time it happened to me, I was 18. I was lying in bed, staring at my curtains, when out of nowhere, I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't yell for help. It was as though something was holding me down, freezing me in place. When I told my mother about it, that's when she shared her own experiences. She told me how she had often been held down, unable to move or speak, and how she'd seen something at the foot of her bed. My brother had his own story too. He heard a voice say, "I'm back," as clear as day. The strangest part is how similar the 3 of us experience it. It happens in an instant, usually when we're exhausted. You're awake, fully aware, but paralyzed, trapped in some kind of still trance, unable to call out for help. Last week, it happened to me 6 times in a row. Each time, as soon as I managed to shake it off, it came right back. On the 6th time, something was different. I felt a presence standing next to me. I looked over and saw a faint white light hovering near me. It moved slowly from my right side, over my head, then over my husband's head. It finally stopped and stayed next to him. Around the light, there was something darker, like black, waving tentacles or strands of hair. For the first time, I was seeing it, not just feeling it. I was frozen with terror. I tried waking my husband, but he had taken a sleeping pill and was too drowsy to get up. Desperate, I grabbed his mobile phone and turned on the light. With the phone's glow, I couldn't see the thing anymore. But as soon as the light was off, it was still there. I spent hours lying awake, my eyes fixed on it, my body ice cold with goosebumps. My husband doesn't believe in these things, but even he could see how terrified I was. When I told my brother, he was shaken. He'd seen the exact same thing a week earlier. Then just last night, my mother saw it too. It was her first encounter in 4 years, but it went further this time. She said it didn't just stay near her. It entered her body. She described seeing the figure of an old woman with piercing eyes, bluish green, like a lizard's. She tried to scream for my stepfather, who was about to get into bed, but the words wouldn't come out. He heard a faint noise, thought she was choking, and grabbed her to help. The moment he touched her, she felt the thing leave her body through her left side. When it was inside her, she said it made itself known. It let her know that it was back, and that it had total control. We've tried to rid ourselves of it. We've had our homes blessed multiple times. It seems to work for a while, but eventually, it comes back. My brother and I are terrified of whatever this is, but my mother, she's not scared anymore. She's just angry, furious that this thing keeps finding us and disrupting our lives. We don't know what to do anymore. If anyone out there has experienced something similar or knows what this might be, please let me know. We're desperate for answers. Hey everyone, I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way. It all started in a quiet neighborhood in Beverly, Massachusetts. My mom, my sister, our dog Panda, and I had just moved into a new house and were beginning to settle in when strange things started happening. At first, it seemed harmless, just little things we could easily brush off. But soon, it became impossible to ignore. One evening, my mom and sister left to grab groceries, leaving me home alone to work on an oral report. It wasn't long after they left, maybe 3 minutes or so, when I heard a loud banging on the front door. Thinking it might be them forgetting something, I went to check. But when I opened the door, no one was there. I shrugged it off, figuring it might have been my imagination or just the wind. I went back upstairs to my room, but a few moments later, the banging started again, this time at the back door. Curious and a little unsettled, I went to check. Again, no one was there. Trying to shake off the unease, I went to the kitchen to grab a soda before heading back upstairs. That seemed to be the end of it, at least for that night. The next incident was my mom's. I was at a new friend's house and my sister was at the park. Mom was home alone, making lunch for us for when we returned. Once she finished, she sat down in the living room with a book, hoping to relax. About 30 minutes into her story, she suddenly felt a cold breath on the back of her neck, like someone was standing right behind her. When she turned around, she saw the silhouette of a man in an army uniform. Terrified, she didn't know what to do. She grabbed her things and rushed to the library, too shaken to stay in the house. But even at the library, she couldn't focus. She just sat there, overwhelmed by what she'd seen. Then it was my sister's turn. She was in her room, playing with the miniature porcelain dolls that our Nana had given her. She loved those dolls, but that day, something strange happened. One of the dolls lifted off the ground, floating in midair, and then drifted out of the room. She chased after it, watching in shock as it floated out of the house and landed on 3 graves in the backyard. When she told me what had happened, I knew we had to look into it. I went to the computer and started researching the history of the house. What I found was chilling. Decades ago, a family had lived there, a husband, wife, and their daughter. The husband, an alcoholic, had lost control one night. He went on a rampage, killing both his wife and daughter before burying them in the backyard. Afterward, he took his own life. The story alone was horrifying, but then something even stranger happened. As I sat at the computer, it started typing on its own. Words appeared on the screen. Help us. We knew we couldn't ignore this any longer. My mom called a cemetery keeper and explained everything. They came to the house, exhumed the remains from the backyard, and ensured the bodies were buried properly in a marked grave. After that, the strange occurrences stopped. The house finally felt at peace, and so did we. To the spirits who had been trapped there for so long, rest in peace. Hi, I'm Cynthia, and tonight I want to share some experiences from a place very close to my heart, my grandparents' house in Blue Bell. It's where I lived until I was about 11 years old, and it holds a lot of memories for me. Some are warm and comforting, but others, well, they've left me with more questions than answers. The first time I remember something strange happening, I was around 7 years old. At the time, I was sleeping in my mom's room because my own room always felt a little eerie. I couldn't explain it, but something about it made me uncomfortable. One night, I woke up suddenly. The room was dimly lit, and everything seemed still, but then I heard it, a soft creaking sound coming from the bathroom door. The bathroom is just on the other side of my mom's bedroom, and the sound sent chills down my spine. I nudged my mom awake and told her what I'd heard. My mom is a light sleeper, so she got up right away. I followed her as she walked over to the bathroom to check. I was sure that before we had gone to bed, the bathroom door had been closed completely. But now it was wide open. My mom and I exchanged looks of shock. I could see that she was as surprised as I was, though she tried to hide it, probably not wanting to scare me more than I already was. She said, uncomfortably, that it was probably just the wind. But that didn't make sense. The bathroom window was always shut. We went back to bed, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. That was the first encounter, but it was far from the last. Over the years, many more strange things happened in that house. Every time we took pictures inside, large orbs would appear, floating around us. My dog, Panda, would often bark at the walk-in closet for no apparent reason, especially when we were sitting at the computer desk nearby. It was like he could sense something that I couldn't see. Then there was the night I'll never forget. I was asleep in my room, and in the middle of the night, I woke up to the faint outline of a figure. It was a boy, standing near the corner by my closet. He was blurry, almost like he wasn't fully there, but I could make out his form. He looked at me, then walked toward my bed. I froze, unable to move, as he collapsed from the floor beside me. Just like that, he disappeared. I lay there for what felt like hours, too scared to even breathe. I've always known that my grandparents' house is built on historically significant land. It sits on the grounds of a campsite used during the Revolutionary War, a place where injured soldiers were brought to recover. That history has always fascinated me, but it also makes me wonder about the spirits that linger there. Are they connected to those soldiers? Are they trapped, trying to communicate something? Even though these experiences have been unsettling, I've never felt like the spirits in the house meant to harm us. My grandparents still live there, and I visit often. Despite everything, I love that house. It's where I grew up, and it will always hold a special place in my heart. The spirits that linger there won't drive me away, but they certainly keep me wondering. What do you think? Have you ever experienced something similar in a place you love? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. It was sometime around June of 2005, when I was in grade 6. I remember it vividly because it's a memory that still gives me chills. I was sitting at home on this very computer, playing on an online dress-up doll site. It was a normal day, the temperature warm and comfortable, when suddenly, the air around my right shoulder blade turned icy cold. The rest of the room felt fine, but that spot was freezing. Curious, I reached out to feel the cold area, but my hand was stopped by something solid, something invisible. My heart raced as fear took hold of me, but I stayed rooted to my chair, too scared to move. That's when things took an even stranger turn. The computer mouse began moving on its own. I watched in disbelief as it dragged items of clothing onto the digital doll, piece by piece. Then, as if it had a mind of its own, it logged into the chat room under the username kit_cat221. I remember that name so clearly. The chat room window popped up, and the ghost started typing frantically to everyone in the chat. That was the moment I lost it. Screaming, I bolted out of the room. A few days later, I walked into the lounge room to find the computer already on. No one had been using it. The screen displayed a search engine filled with pictures of cartoons. As I stepped closer to the desk, the computer turned off by itself. I didn't know what to think anymore. The next morning, my mom got on the computer and called me over. She'd found a new desktop background, one that none of us had set. It was a picture of me standing next to a cartoon cemetery and a grim reaper. No one had been on the computer since that morning, and no one could explain how the image got there. I started to feel like something, or someone, was trying to tell me something. My fear began to consume me. One morning, I became so panicked while waiting at the bus stop that I decided to go back home. As I turned to walk into my yard, I heard a loud crash behind me. I spun around just in time to see a four-wheel drive slam into the power pole where I had been standing just moments earlier. My legs went weak as I realized the pole had fallen right where I'd been leaning. If I hadn't walked away, I would have been seriously injured, or worse. I couldn't shake the feeling that the picture of the Grim Reaper had been some kind of warning. Shaken to my core, I spent the rest of the day in my bedroom. It was around 5 in the afternoon when the temperature in my room suddenly plummeted. The air became icy cold, just like it had days earlier. Terrified, I ran for the door, but before I could reach it, something grabbed my shoulder firmly. I stopped in my tracks and turned around, but no one was there. Then, right in front of me, a transparent light appeared. It took the shape of a girl my age. She stood there, glowing softly, as I stared in stunned silence. Before I could even process what was happening, I heard a whisper, soft, barely audible, but unmistakable. Goodbye. Just like that, the light disappeared, and the temperature in the room returned to normal. I haven't seen the ghost since that day, but I still think about everything that happened. The icy cold air, the picture on the computer, and the crash at the bus stop. Was it all connected? Was someone watching over me, trying to protect me? I'll probably never know. But those moments have stayed with me, and I doubt I'll ever forget them. What do you think? Could it have been a guardian spirit, or was it something else entirely? When I was younger, my dad worked nights at the American Legion, cleaning the building after hours. He was the only one there during his shift, so sometimes I'd go along to keep him company. One night, my friend Ashley came with me. We were playing around in a part of the building called the Blue Room. It had a bar, tables, and chairs, a typical event space. I was standing near the liquor room door, just goofing around, when I decided to tap on the door for no reason. To my surprise, someone, or something, tapped back. The pattern was different from mine, deliberate and clear. I froze, glancing at Ashley to see if she had heard it too. The look on her face said it all. She was terrified. Without a word, we bolted for the door, but just as we got out of the room, Ashley screamed. Something had grabbed her leg. She yanked herself free, and we ran across the hall into another room. When we looked back, nothing was there. We sat down to catch our breath, and Ashley rolled up her pant leg to see what had happened. Her knee was red and blotchy, as though someone had grabbed her tightly. We were so shaken that we refused to go back into the Blue Room again unless there were a lot of people with us. A few weeks later, Ashley, my sister, and I decided to go back with my dad, half out of curiosity, half to see if anything else would happen. We were sitting in the bingo hall when a loud screeching sound echoed through the building. It came from the main hall, so we went to investigate. Peeking into the Blue Room, we saw a chair dolly sitting in the middle of the dance floor. The dolly is used to move stacks of chairs, and there were scratch marks on the floor behind it, as if someone, or something, had pushed it. To see if it was the same sound, I pushed the dolly about a foot, and sure enough, it made the exact same noise we'd heard earlier. Later that same night, the three of us were downstairs near the stairwell, messing around with a copy machine. My dad came down to check on us, looking puzzled. "You guys have been down here this whole time?" he asked. We nodded, and then he said, "Then who's been flushing the toilets upstairs?" Apparently, while we were downstairs, my dad had been hearing footsteps running around the bathrooms and toilets, flushing repeatedly, but no one else was in the building. After that night, I decided to look up some history about the American Legion. I found out that the building had been used as a hospital for injured soldiers during World War II. That fact sent a chill down my spine. It made me wonder, were the things we experienced connected to the soldiers who had once stayed there? Were they still lingering in some way? There are so many more things that have happened to me and to others in that building. I consider myself an intelligent person, someone grounded in logic and reason. But what I experienced that night defied any explanation I could come up with. It wasn't sleep paralysis. I wasn't asleep. It wasn't an external noise or some trick of the environment. It was something else entirely. Could it have been my mind playing tricks on me? I suppose that's possible, but if it were, I think I would have experienced something like this before. It started at around 1:00 a.m. I had just finished working on my computer and was getting ready for bed. I switched off the lights, walked to my room, and climbed into bed. As I closed my eyes, I began hearing strange noises. At first, it was a mix of whooshing, roaring, and clattering sounds. They were faint but unsettling. Then, out of nowhere, I heard a whisper, clear, deliberate, and menacing. It was in a tone that felt malicious, and it said something like, "I can see you," or "I know you're there." Before I could even process what I had just heard, an incredibly loud whooshing sound came through my right ear. It was so intense I almost felt it physically. My heart was racing. I was too terrified to open my eyes, paralyzed by fear. In that moment, I did the only thing I could think of. I prayed. I prayed earnestly to God, calling on the name of Jesus Christ over and over. Gradually, the noises faded and the oppressive feeling lifted. I finally felt safe again. A few days later, I shared this experience with my sister. To my surprise, she told me about something that had happened to her just 2 weeks earlier, in a completely different house. She had heard a whisper too. It said, "What are you doing?" But when she looked around, there was no one there. And it doesn't end there. Today, my niece told her that she's heard things too. She mentioned hearing childish laughter in the house and seeing the gray shadow of what she described as a man in one of the rooms. Apologies for the interruption. If you're enjoying the video, please let me know in the comments from where you were watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. I've always been a skeptic, but now I'm convinced. There are things in this world we can't explain. If ghosts are real, then there must be an afterlife. And if there is an afterlife, then there is a God. I can't explain what happened to me that night, but I'll never forget it. It changed the way I see the world forever. I don't usually let friends into my room. It's always been a private space, and frankly, I've been too nervous about what might happen. But yesterday was different. Let me backtrack a bit. On Wednesday afternoon at school, I made plans with one of my friends, Josh, to hang out at the mall. He said he'd swing by my house first, and we could walk there together, picking up the rest of our group along the way. After school, I walked home around 3 p.m. The house was quiet when I got there, and I called my mom to double-check that it was okay for me to go out. Once I got her approval, I started pulling out my homework from my bag so she'd see I'd finished it when she got home. While I was doing that, I swear I heard a soft hiss coming from the hallway. It gave me a little chill, but since we have a cat, I didn't think much of it. Josh arrived not long after, and just as we were about to leave, he asked if he could borrow a manga I'd mentioned to him before. I said sure and led him to my room to grab it. While I crouched down with my back to him, digging through my bookshelf for the one he wanted, I thought I heard someone whisper my name. It was faint, and I brushed it off as my imagination. I found the manga and stood to hand it to him when he suddenly jerked back like someone had shoved him. He stumbled, looking pale and freaked out, but neither of us said anything. Trying to break the tension, I handed him the book and said, "Here you go. Just give it back whenever you're done." We both left the room, me leading the way. As we were heading out, I heard my name again, this time clearer, almost like someone was standing right behind me. Before I could react, Josh slammed into me, hard enough to knock me to the floor. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, "but it wasn't me. Someone keeps pushing me." We were both terrified. Without a word, we bolted out of the house and walked in silence for what felt like forever. When we finally reached Joe's house, the first friend we were picking up, the conversation shifted and things felt a little less tense. But Josh still wouldn't talk directly to me. Even now, he hasn't said much about what happened. That night, back at home, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I lay in my bed trying to calm down, but the whispers started again. My name, repeated over and over, softly but persistently. It was too much. I grabbed a blanket and pillow and spent the rest of the night on the couch. I can't stop wondering, why did whoever or whatever this is push Josh? It's never done anything like that before. Was it trying to get a message across? Was it angry? I don't know, but I'm scared it might hurt someone else. If anyone has any ideas or advice, I'd really appreciate it. Right now, I'm afraid for my friends and what might happen next. I've never seen a ghost outright in its full form, but I've had experiences that make me believe there's something beyond what we can explain. I've seen orbs, felt presences, and noticed things that I can't easily dismiss. Right now, as I sit in my room, there's a familiar chill. My room is always the coldest in the house, even with the windows shut and the curtains drawn. There's no wind or draft, but I'm watching my dream catcher hanging from the ceiling, gently swaying and turning as if something unseen is moving it. I've always been sensitive to these kinds of things. I don't like to sleep alone, and I often feel uneasy, especially at night. I live in a downstairs apartment with someone else renting the upstairs. The man who lives above me is very religious and quite old. I keep the doors and windows locked to make sure no one can come in, but the locks don't do much to ease the feeling that I'm not alone. One night, my dad told me he was going out of town for the weekend, leaving me to stay alone. I wasn't thrilled about it. I've never been good at being alone because of the experiences I've had, both here and at my old house. But I agreed. After locking everything up tightly, I went to bed in my room, the one that often gives me the creeps. I woke up a few hours later, right around midnight, with an overwhelming sense of something being wrong. That's when I felt it, a hand caressing my thigh. My eyes flew open, and I realized my hands were above my head, clasped together, and my shirt had been pulled up near them. I froze in terror. The door was shut, everything was still locked, and nothing seemed out of place, but I saw something faint, like a shadow or a mist, fading above me. I didn't sleep for the rest of the weekend. It didn't stop there. The next day, as I tried to distract myself by chatting with friends on the computer, I felt hands on my shoulders, legs, and stomach. The touch wasn't harsh, but it was unmistakable and deeply unsettling. It happened more than once over the course of the weekend, and each time I was left shaken, unable to explain what was happening. I know some people might not believe me. That's okay. I've made peace with the fact that sharing these experiences is a risk. Only my sister knows about these things, and she once told me that she had similar encounters after using a Ouija board when she was my age. I've never touched a Ouija board, though. It makes me wonder, why is this happening to me? Sometimes, it's not just about being scared. There are moments when I feel like someone desperately needs to communicate with me, like they have something to say. I get this overwhelming urge to go somewhere, as if I'm being drawn to a specific place for a reason. Once, I followed that feeling to a park, and there I found a friend I hadn't spoken to in years. She was crying, and when I approached her, she told me she'd been thinking about me and wishing I'd come. I had no idea why I was there until I saw her, but I felt compelled to go before something bad happened. I don't know what any of this means. I'm healthy and have no psychological issues, so I don't think it's just my mind playing tricks on me. Let me set the scene for you before I dive into what happened that night. This took place in our computer room, back when we still had the old computer, not the fastest or brightest, but it got the job done. The room is located near a window that faces the road, so when cars drive by at night, Their headlights cast reflections that travel across the walls before fading away. It was a familiar sight, one I'd grown used to over the years. It was the beginning of December 2006, and I was 14. I remember the night clearly. I was sitting in the computer chair, chatting with a friend online. My cat, Autumn, was perched on a chair behind me, her usual spot when she kept me company. It was late, technically early morning, around 3:30 a.m., and the house was quiet. My brother was in his room, snoring loudly enough that I could hear him through the walls, and my mom was upstairs, fast asleep. If she'd come down, the creaking stairs would have given her away instantly. I was bored while waiting for my friend to reply, so I started swaying back and forth in the spinning computer chair, watching my shadow shift on the wall behind me. Everything felt normal, the kind of stillness you expect late at night. Then I turned back to the computer to check for my friend's response when I heard a noise. It wasn't loud, but it was strange enough to catch my attention. I turned to Autumn, who was staring intently at the doorway that led to the living room. Her ears were perked up, her eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. Curious, I followed her gaze. That's when I saw it, a black haze, vaguely shaped like a person, standing in the doorway. It lingered for just a moment before vanishing into thin air. Autumn jumped off the chair and padded into the living room. My heart was racing, but I got up to follow her. I thought maybe my dog had woken up, or perhaps my brother had come out of his room. When I reached the living room, the only thing I saw was my dog fast asleep under one of the tables. No one else was there. I stood in the doorway for a while, trying to process what I had just seen. Was it my imagination? A trick of the light? It had been late, after all, and I was tired. But it didn't feel like a trick. It felt real. Even now, I'm not entirely sure what it was. I don't fuss about it much anymore. It's not something that keeps me awake at night, but I thought it was worth sharing. I know there are spirits in my house. I've always felt their presence. They don't bother anyone, though, so I've never been afraid of them. You can believe this story if you want or not. That's up to you. Maybe it was just my eyes playing tricks on me in the early hours of the morning, but maybe it wasn't. I guess I'll never really know for sure. Before moving to our current house, we lived about 25 miles away in another home for 4 years. That house had a finished attic space that we used for storage. We'd originally planned to turn it into a guest room, but it was always so cold and felt more useful for storage. Despite this, I never felt entirely comfortable up there. There was always this underlying sense of unease. My niece, who was around 14 or 15 at the time, mentioned something that caught my attention. She told me she'd seen a lady in the attic, a woman dressed in 1800s attire. According to her, the lady didn't mean any harm. After hearing that, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling I'd sometimes get in the kitchen either. Oddly enough, though, my baking was better than ever while we lived in that house. Maybe it was the oven, or maybe it wasn't. Fast forward to now. We've lived in our current house for just over 2 years. When we bought it, the previous owner was going through pre-foreclosure, and the house needed work. She was in her early 30s and had been practicing witchcraft for some time. How long, I can't say. As we cleaned and painted the house before moving in, I noticed something unusual. There were blackened handprints in specific places, on doorways, near windows, as though they'd been deliberately placed. They weren't glaringly obvious, but once you noticed them, you couldn't unsee them. After moving in, I began to feel an intense unease in certain areas of the house, much like I'd felt in the attic of our previous home. This house has a similar finished attic space that we use for storage, but there's also a spare room up there. My niece, then 16, visited and told me the attic had many spirits, and bad things had happened there. We usually keep the door to the attic closed and only go up when we need to retrieve something. Last week, my husband and I slept upstairs for 3 nights while relatives stayed in our bedroom. For the first time, the attic door was left open the entire time. On the 3rd night, we had sex, and for some reason, I feel like that might be relevant. Since we returned to sleeping downstairs, I've been feeling that uneasy sensation more frequently, particularly in the living room. One of our dogs, a young female, has started staring intently at the hallway that leads from the upstairs to the living room. She looks fascinated, as though she's watching something move, like a bug crawling or an animal sitting there. But there's nothing there. Our older male dog doesn't seem to notice anything. The other night, my husband fell asleep on the couch. He doesn't believe in ghosts per se, so he hesitated to tell me this, but last night he admitted something strange. He said he woke up suddenly and saw a hazy form above him. He felt a weight pressing down on him. While he wasn't scared, the experience weirded him out. Just 2 days prior, his stepdad had passed, and I wonder if this could have been him saying goodbye. I feel like that might be unrelated to the other things happening in the house, but it's what pushed me to seek answers. There's one more thing I want to mention, and it's why I think the sex might have some significance. Since moving into this house, I've had a series of odd health-related issues that have interfered with my ability to have sex often. These problems are new, and my doctors can't find any medical cause. I can't help but wonder if there's a connection. I've never felt outright threatened by the spirits here, but I do feel unsettled. I'm not sure what to make of everything that's been happening, and I'm feeling a bit out of sorts. If you have any insights, suggestions, or advice, I'd love to hear them. When I was about 9, my family and I lived in my great-grandparents' house. My great-grandparents had passed away, but their home became ours. Even at that age, I remember feeling uneasy in the house. My room, in particular, gave me the constant sensation of being watched. I was scared to sleep there, though I never fully understood why. One night, I woke up needing to go to the bathroom. As I rubbed the sleep from my eyes, I saw something strange. A large reddish figure emerging from my window. It looked almost as if it were made of clay, its texture and color unlike anything I'd seen before. I froze, terrified, unable to look away until it disappeared. Later, I told my mom about what I'd seen, and to my shock, she said she'd experienced something similar. The figure she saw was blue, but it also seemed to come through her window, with that same clay-like appearance. It wasn't just my mom and me who had odd experiences in the house. One night, my dad was sleeping on the couch downstairs, and the next morning, he asked my mom why she had been standing over him while he slept. My mom, confused, told him she hadn't left the bedroom upstairs all night. My dad, who doesn't believe in ghosts, brushed it off, but the story stayed with me. The strange occurrences weren't limited to nighttime. When I'd take baths in that house, I often heard voices. They weren't my parents' voices, and they didn't sound familiar at all. Once, the voices scared me so badly that I grabbed a towel and bolted out of the bathroom without finishing my bath. We moved out of the house when I was 12, and for a while, I thought I'd left all of that behind. But life has a way of circling back. I'm 16 now, and after my parents' divorce, we had to move back into my great-grandparents' house. The sense of being watched is still there, though it doesn't scare me as much as it did when I was a kid. Now it's more of a persistent, creeping unease, but the strange occurrences haven't stopped. Lately, I've been having recurring dreams about the rock pile in our backyard. In these dreams, either I or my younger brother is crushed beneath it. What's unsettling is that I only have these dreams when I'm at the house. I still hear voices sometimes when I'm taking a shower, even if I know I'm the only one home. There are other strange things too, cold spots appearing out of nowhere, the TV or vacuum turning on and off by themselves. I've never tried to speak to the voices or acknowledge the ghosts directly, mostly because I'm terrified of hearing something respond. Once, my friend Nicole and I tried experimenting with an Ouija board to see if we could communicate with whatever is in the house. But after just 5 minutes, I panicked and stopped. It was too much for me. And then there's the basement. I hate going down there. It's unfinished with a dirt floor and rock walls that make it feel even more unsettling. Unfortunately, I have to go down there to do laundry, and every time I do, I feel like I'm being watched. Once, while folding clothes, I swear I felt something play with my hair. That was the last straw for me. The voices I hear sometimes aren't even in English. They're in German, and since my great-grandparents immigrated to America from Germany, I wonder if it's them. But if it is, why don't I feel comforted? Why do I feel so uneasy? What I'm about to share with you is something I truly believe to be real. It's strange, unexplainable, and feels like it's tied to something supernatural. These episodes started when I was around 11 or 12 years old. I'm 32 now, and to be honest, I hadn't thought much about them until recently, when they started happening again. The first time it happened, I was a kid waking up in the morning. You know that peaceful state you're in when you're just taking in your surroundings. I was lying in bed, my eyes barely open, when I saw it. In front of me, at what would have been head height if it had a body, was the head of an old man with a white beard. It wasn't a vision or a fleeting image. It was animated. His eyes blinked, and he seemed very observant, though his expression was neutral. I felt calm, oddly enough, not frightened. I closed my eyes, thinking it would disappear when I looked again, but it didn't. On my second attempt, the head was gone. That was the end of it, but for years after, I'd sleep with the covers pulled over my eyes just in case. Eventually, I convinced myself it was my imagination. For years, nothing like that happened again. Then 2 years ago, I had a similar episode. This time, the head I saw belonged to a relative. Again, I felt calm throughout the experience. I dismissed it, telling myself it could have been sleep paralysis or my mind playing tricks on me. But here's the real twist. Over the past month, these episodes have been happening regularly. I'm not sure what to make of it. My wife and I moved into a new house about 1.5 years ago, and everything was fine, until recently. It started with a nightmare. I woke up in the middle of the night, relieved to realize it was just a dream. Turning over in bed to face the wardrobe, I saw something unexpected. A section of what looked like a wooden fence with a hole in it. Through the hole, an eye was staring at me, alive and blinking. I was so tired that I didn't react as you'd expect. I didn't scream or jump up. I just turned my head and fell back to sleep. The next week, it happened again after another nightmare. I woke up and thought, that was a horrible dream. I turned toward the wardrobe, and this time, I saw a scroll etched in black. It was long and narrow, and the writing on it wasn't in English, more like symbols, maybe Japanese or something similar. It glowed in the dark room, standing out like a light bulb. I was fully awake this time, so I grabbed my glasses to get a better look. The writing became clearer, but I still couldn't make out what it said. After about 20 seconds, the scroll began to fade, almost like someone was erasing it in sand or on a chalkboard. What struck me most was that when I closed my eyes, the image was still there, like when you stare at a bright light and it leaves a mark on your vision. It felt real. A week later, I woke again, and this time I saw my grandfather. His image was vibrant and colorful, smiling at me from the same spot near the wardrobe. I called out to him, asking, "Are you really there?" To my shock, I heard a distant yet clear voice respond, "Yes, Paul, I am." Oddly, I felt relieved. I didn't feel fear, only comfort, and I fell back asleep. Last night, the latest episode happened. I had been avoiding looking toward the wardrobe lately, but something always seems to draw me to it when I wake. I had the covers pulled over most of my face, but a small section of the wall was visible, and there it was again. This time, it wasn't a scroll but a series of black symbols that looked like moon phases or crescents. The shapes faded away slowly, drifting upward as though they were dissolving. And that's where I'm at now. These episodes have been happening consistently over the past month, and I'm not sure what to think. Are these visions real? Are they tied to sleep paralysis? Is my mind playing tricks on me in a vulnerable state? When I was little, my family lived in this dodgy old house. I can't even remember where. My parents later told me the people who lived there before us were into occult stuff. Back then, I would refuse to sleep in my room. My dad says I used to pull my mattress out of my room every night and set it up perfectly in front of my parents' door. I can't even move a mattress now, let alone when I was 3 years old. When Dad asked why, I'd say, the bad man keeps talking to me. For years, everything seemed to stop. I didn't think about it again until I was 13. It was the holidays and my mom was home. I'd just woken up and was lying in bed when I froze. Out of nowhere, I heard someone scream, "Oh God, help me, please help." Thinking it was my mom, I jumped out of bed and ran to her. She was fine and hadn't heard a thing. Freaked out, I went back to bed, but half an hour later, I heard another voice say, "Hey, didn't you help me?" That's when the strange things started happening again. One night, my friend was sleeping over. We were sitting in the dark, laughing, when I saw something out of the corner of my eye. I turned to look, and there it was, a shadow darker than the already dark room. It moved across the wall, heading toward the hallway. I asked my friend if she could see it, but she couldn't. Just as the shadow reached the hall, my dad walked in to tell us to quiet down. The first thing he noticed was how cold the room had gotten. About a month later, I woke up in the middle of the night to see a dark figure standing over me. My stereo was on, casting a faint light in the room, and I could clearly see it. Terrified, I screamed and hid under the blankets until morning. After that, nothing happened for a few months, until it did. This time, I woke up to find the same man at the end of my bed, but he wasn't alone. In front of him stood a little girl in a white Victorian-style dress. She looked upset, and I immediately felt she wasn't a threat, but the man behind her definitely was. I closed my eyes and went back to sleep, hoping they'd leave me alone. When Dad and I moved into another house, things didn't improve. On our first morning there, Dad heard a voice say, "Hello." Thinking it was me, he said hello back. Later, when he came to say goodbye before leaving for work, he asked why I was out of bed so early, but I hadn't left my room. After he left, I heard a male voice say, "Hi." I thought Dad had come back, but he hadn't. During the year we lived there, we often saw orbs and objects moving. We later learned a family had lived in that house before us. They'd all died in a bus accident. Now we've moved again, our third house, and this one is the worst by far. It's an old country house, a little rundown, but it clearly has a history. Since the first night here, I've been seeing things almost every night. There's an old man who walks through my room. He's sort of see-through, with a big bushy beard, and he looks Amish. Every time he passes by my bed, he gives me a nasty look. Doors open on their own, and lights that were turned off somehow turn on. It's freezing inside, no matter how hot it is outside, and it's not from air conditioning. We don't even have a working heater right now. Things move around the house, too. I'll leave my guitar in the lounge room, only to find it in the kitchen the next morning. I know it's not my dad. He'd never touch my guitar because he knows how much it means to me. And then there's the little girl. I've seen her again a few times since we moved here, and I don't know why she's following me. I feel like she's trying to tell me something, but I don't know what. Dad doesn't notice much, but I see things all the time. My Nana was the same way. She still sees things to this day. I don't know how to get rid of whatever's in the house or how to help the spirits that might be stuck here. I'm just tired of being scared half to death every night. If anyone has advice, I'd love to hear it. In Brookfield, IL, the woods have long been a place of mystery. It's said that Native Americans once settled there as far back as the 1300s. For years, I'd heard stories about strange occurrences in those woods, but I'd never taken them seriously. That all changed on Monday, April 23, 2007, at around 10:00 p.m., when I saw something I can't explain, an orb. I was with 3 friends that night, walking through the woods. We'd been out there for over an hour, listening to one of them recount past experiences with the paranormal. At first, it was just eerie talk, but then small things began to happen that we couldn't ignore. The most noticeable was the river nearby. It had been perfectly still, not a ripple in sight, when suddenly there was a loud burst in the water, as if a massive fish had leaped and splashed back in. There were no branches large enough to make a noise like that, and the river returned to being eerily calm afterward. One of my friends also shared a terrifying experience from a previous visit. He described walking with a group of people when he suddenly felt a blow to his back, as if he'd been struck by a baseball bat. The force was so strong that he fell to his knees and couldn't stand. The others had to carry him out of the woods. What's strange is that there were no animals nearby, and he was in the middle of the group at the time. No one saw or heard anything that could have caused it. Apologies for the interruption. If you're enjoying the video, please let me know in the comments from where you are watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. But the most bizarre occurrences, the ones that keep drawing people back to the woods, are the orbs. My friends and even strangers have seen them with their own eyes and captured them on cameras. They're not all the same. Some are red, some blue, and others appear as dark, fuzzy cloud-like shapes. These orbs sometimes linger for a full minute before vanishing, and it's happened too many times to dismiss as coincidence. I always thought these stories were exaggerations or tricks of the mind, until that night. As we were walking out of the woods, two of my friends spotted a dark-colored orb. It appeared briefly and then disappeared into the shadows. Intrigued, we stopped to watch the dark areas of the woods more closely, hoping to see something ourselves. About 2 minutes later, I saw it. A blue, circular orb suddenly appeared in front of me. It hung there for about 3 seconds before vanishing. I was stunned. I hadn't been looking at any lights beforehand, and my eyes had fully adjusted to the darkness. I stared directly at the spot, and it just materialized. Not long after, we spotted two more cloud-like images floating near the trees. They lingered, moved slightly, and then dissolved into the night. Seeing this for myself changed everything. I've always been skeptical about spirits or ghosts, but these moments were undeniable. No one in our group was under the influence of drugs or alcohol. We weren't out there for publicity or pranks. What we saw was real, and it's happened far too often for it to be dismissed as a hoax. We've since returned to the woods to investigate further, still seeking answers to what's really happening there. I speak with 100% honesty about what I saw that night, and I'll never forget it. Whether you believe me or not, I know what I experienced, and it has forever changed how I see the world. It all started when I was about 9 years old, living with my mom, brother, and sister. Our house was at the end of a quiet road in a village filled with old houses and a church, a place with history in every corner. The house we lived in had been home to several people who had passed away over the years. One evening, while sitting downstairs, my mom had a chilling experience. She heard what sounded like a man from the early 1900s walking down the stairs and through a wall. We weren't sure if he'd come from her room or mine, but after that night, things started happening to me. I began having strange, vivid dreams. In one of them, I saw the same man my mom described handing my cousin to my aunt. It was unsettling, to say the least. Since then, we've moved twice. But now, in the house we live in, those feelings of being watched have returned. A few months ago, after coming back from a party and staying at a friend's house, I noticed something unusual. Above the French doors in our living room, there appeared to be a mist hovering. It wasn't faint. It was clear to me, though no one else could see it. I asked 6 different people to come and look, but they all said they saw nothing. Feeling uneasy, I stood on a chair to get a closer look. The mist wasn't just stationary. It had tiny beads of water swirling around, moving toward me, then retreating again. It was mesmerizing and unnerving at the same time. I've seen this mist appear several times since then, out of nowhere. But lately, things have taken a more unsettling turn. It feels like whatever this is has grown stronger. About 4 days ago, I was sitting in the front room watching TV while a pizza cooked in the kitchen. Suddenly, the smoke alarm went off. I rushed to the kitchen, but there was no smoke. What's more, the oven door was wide open. I knew I had shut it before leaving the kitchen. At first, I thought maybe I had just forgotten, but as I leaned closer to check the oven, the door slammed shut, hard. It wasn't just a soft close. The whole oven shook as though someone had slammed it in anger. The chill that ran through me was immediate and intense, like someone was standing right there next to me. Since that night, things have escalated. I've had my entire CD collection thrown across my bedroom floor. These CDs were propped securely with a baseball and a display case holding them in place, so there's no way they could have just fallen on their own. It feels deliberate, like something is trying to make its presence known. I can't shake the feeling that this presence is the same man from the 1900s that my mom saw all those years ago. Whatever, or whoever, it seems determined to stay, and its presence has only grown stronger over time. My friend Julia has lived in the same house for as long as I've known her. She doesn't know how old the house is, but her dad once told her that he used to ride his bike past it as a little boy. Over the years, I've spent countless nights at her house, and I've experienced some of the strangest things I could imagine. There are at least 5 different entities in her home. The first is a little girl in a white dress with long brown hair. Then there's a very tall man dressed in black, carrying a large axe. There's also a man with a hat and cloak who often walks the hallways. Another is a young man with black eyes who has an unsettling presence. And finally, there's a man wearing a long-sleeved white shirt, short hair, and jeans who wanders through the kitchen and dining room. I've seen all of these entities at least once, some of them more than once. Most of them don't seem to want to harm anyone, but 2 of them frighten me: the boy with the black eyes and the man with the axe. The boy with the black eyes is the most unnerving. He often appears when you're trying to sleep. At first, he just mumbles unintelligibly, but eventually, his words become clear, and they're always cruel. He swears a lot, and one time, when Julia was lying in bed, he leaned close to her ear and called her a ***. Then he said he was going to beat her. The experience left her shaken for days. The man with the axe is just as terrifying, but in a different way. He seems to be chasing the little girl. She will appear briefly before vanishing, and moments later, he'll walk into the room, looking around as though searching for her, before leaving. It's like a haunting scene playing out in pieces, over and over. I've had my own experiences with these entities. Many times when I've gotten up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom or get a drink, I've seen someone standing in the hallway or watching me from the dining room. They don't always interact, but their presence is undeniable. I've also heard footsteps moving around the house, even when everyone else was asleep. Sometimes they'll talk, though I can never quite make out what they're saying. The television and radio have turned on and off on their own too. What's strange to me is how many spirits there seem to be in one house. It's not just 1 or 2. It's a whole group. As I said, most of them don't scare me, but I can't help but wonder why they're all here. What is it about this house that attracts so much activity? I've been an avid reader of stories on this site for several months now, and I've finally worked up the courage to share one of my own. This happened 2 summers ago, but it still spooks me when I think about it. My friend Sarah comes from a big family. She's one of 5 sisters. That summer, her oldest sister, Anna, was graduating from high school, and the whole family planned to attend the ceremony. Sarah's mom asked me if I could babysit her 3 younger sisters for the evening. At the time, Rachel was 8, Sammy was 3, and Paula was 2. I happily agreed. I arrived at their house, a brand new home that had just been built. It wasn't creepy in the slightest, with its bright, clean spaces and fresh smell of newness. After wishing Anna good luck and saying goodbye to the family, I settled in with the girls. At around 8:00 p.m., Rachel started complaining that she was hungry, which set off a chorus of whining from Sammy and Paula. So we all headed to the kitchen. I told Rachel to check the pantry to see what she wanted, but she flat out refused. She said she didn't feel right about opening the pantry door. That struck me as odd. Rachel was a brave, headstrong kid, not one to be scared easily. Still, she was only 8, so I shrugged it off, got snacks for everyone, and returned to the living room. We decided to watch Stuart Little, and I placed Rachel on one side of me and Sammy and Paula on the other so I could keep an eye on all of them. By 10:00 p.m., the house began to feel strangely cold, not a natural, breezy kind of cold, but a dry, eerie chill. This was California in the middle of May, and there was no AC running, so it didn't make sense. The cold became so uncomfortable that I told the girls I was going to borrow one of Sarah's sweatshirts from her room. As soon as I mentioned Sarah's room, the door to it, which was visible from the living room, slammed shut with incredible force. It wasn't a gentle close. It slammed so hard it made me jump. Something about the way it happened made me feel uneasy, and I decided not to go in after all. I returned to the couch and tried to ignore the chill. The girls stayed in their original positions, seemingly unfazed. But as I sat there, a sudden wave of dread washed over me. It wasn't the kind of discomfort you can shake off. It was an intense, sinking feeling that something was very wrong. I looked up from the TV, and that's when I saw it. A figure, wearing a crisp white gown, dashed from the hallway into the computer room. It had golden hair, and though it moved quickly, I could tell it was very tall. I couldn't see its feet, so I couldn't tell if it was running or floating. The figure didn't look ghostly or translucent. It looked completely solid, like a living person. Its face was turned away from me, but something about it gave me the impression it was a young man. I sat there stunned, my heart pounding. The figure had been so vivid, so real, that for a moment I doubted what I had seen. I looked at the girls, hoping one of them had noticed it too, but they were all still sitting in their places, focused on the movie, completely unaware of what had just happened. I never told Sarah or her family what I saw that night. I still can't explain it, but the memory of that figure, so alive and yet so out of place, has stayed with me ever since. I haven't been able to find an explanation for what's been happening in my house. It's always cold in my room, but that's not unusual. I keep the fan on high, and my bed is near the attic. What's strange is that when I wake up in the morning, I often feel hot breath on my face. If I'm lying on my side, I feel it on the back of my neck. It's not a one-time thing either. It happens regularly. The feeling of hot breath often hits me the moment I step into my room, as if someone is standing right behind me. The unsettling part? I can't hear the breathing, at least, not usually. The other day, though, something different happened. I was sitting at my computer, typing out a report. I got up to grab a glue bottle from my mom's scrapbook table when I heard someone say my name in a hushed, breathy voice. Then, I felt it, the warm breath on the back of my neck again. But this time, I heard the breathing too. It was soft but distinct, like someone was right behind me. I turned around quickly, but of course no one was there. My mom was outside feeding the seagulls, and my dad and brother were out golfing. I know I've heard things before, but this was different, more deliberate, more real. I've crossed out the possibility of it being my imagination. Our house has had its share of odd occurrences over the years. When the original owner built this house near the sea, he and his wife only lived here for a year before they divorced. Shortly after, we bought the house and have been living here ever since. I'd always assumed a newly built house couldn't be haunted, but I was wrong. At first, I wondered if the ghosts could have driven the previous owners apart. But the strange thing is, the hauntings didn't start right away for us. It took a while, and when they did begin, they were small, almost unnoticeable. Now, they're growing worse. Little by little, week by week. Nothing serious has happened yet, but the intensity is building. It makes me wonder if the land our house was built on could be the cause. Maybe it's sitting on something, like a graveyard. I'm still trying to figure it out. What really puzzles me is what might have happened when the original owner and his wife lived here. Did they experience these hauntings too? Did they sense something wrong, something that pushed them apart? I've tried to find answers, but since they moved away separately, I can't ask them. Whatever the case, the spirits in this house seem to be shy, at least for now.